Home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. One more day here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the last day for a lot of things this week. It's the last Sports Bash of the week because we have the NCAA tournament full takeover Thursday and Friday here on 97.3 ESPN. Also streaming on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank CIL. Got a lot to get to on the show today. Don't forget you have more opportunities to qualify for the Phillies trip to Baltimore giveaway. Listen for the contest sounder each hour for your opportunity to qualify to go to the Phillies game in Baltimore. The trip is all yours, but you got to qualify, and then you must join Mike Gill in the Sports Bash at the Anchorage Summers Point for Phillies Opening Day next Thursday. But before we get to that, we got a ton to get to. The WBC. Who watched that thing last night? I call it a thing because I got some takes, some opinions on that game last night. Mike McGarry, the Press of Atlantic City, will join us coming up as he always does at 2:30. 97.3 Phillies insider Geoff Kerr joins us at 3 o'clock with the latest on the Phillies from spring training, who will be having Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber and company rejoin them at spring training. Not that it really matters because we're a week out from the start of the regular season at this point. I mean, this WBC kind of felt like it took a little bit too long, honestly. Nick Earnshaw for an earlier edition of Nick's Nuggets coming up at 3:30. Football at 4 with Inside the Birds podcast co-host and Philly voice writer Jeff Mosher at 4 o'clock. We'll get into the Flyers with Kevin Durso, Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. The Flyers back on the ice tonight in Anaheim. Of course, you hear that game right here at 10 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. And we will get into March Madness. Chris Vannini joins us from The Athletic here on 97.3 ESPN. I got my sheet. Actually, my sheet's over there. I don't need it right now because we got plenty of other things to get to. Yes, Geoff in Ocean City. I will give you my final for you. And everyone else keeps asking me. I do got some picks as well I wrote down. You know, I've always noticed, I don't know if anybody else goes through the same thing. I'm either really good at picking the individual games in the tournament or I'm really good at the bracket. It's never both. I never am able to do a great bracket and great picks. So I guess it's, please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Definitely applies when it comes to the tournament for me, but that'll be coming up on the show as well. And as always, the Whitehorse RV text board is open at 609-403-0973. What are your guys' thoughts on last night's WBC? Because the one person all I kept thinking of last night, and I'll admit, I missed the very beginning of the WBC game because of that wild ending between UMBC and Howard last night. I mean, that game was nuts. But the WBC last night was an amazing example for why baseball is unpredictable and why you can't take seriously the haters. Because there were people yesterday, and it wasn't just Evan and Little Egg Harbor. There were people on social media who were very hypercritical of Bryce Harper being in the lineup yesterday. Well, Bryce Harper was the only person who did anything last night. And I think that we forget that this is still a baseball game. For as many all-stars and potential future Hall of Famers that are on these teams, the reality is that it's still a baseball game. You got to give a ton of credit to two people last night. Number one, nobody, and I mean nobody, coming into that game last night, unless you are a baseball savant, thought that this was going to be a low-scoring game. Because I look at this game going into it, and I saw that Eduardo Rodriguez was starting. Now, for those who don't know who Eduardo Rodriguez is, Eduardo Rodriguez is a solid, okay, major league pitcher. He is nothing extraordinary. He's nothing special. It's not like he's some elite pitcher. I personally remember him first coming up with the Baltimore Orioles about like 12 years ago. That was my first memory of the guy. And he's basically bounced around Major League Baseball his entire career. He's been an okay pitcher. He's been nothing exceptional. Couple outings here, couple outings there. He's whatever. So my working assumption going into the game last night was this was probably going to be a high-scoring game because Venezuela is a great offensive team, but not a great pitching team. Well, Eduardo Rodriguez shut everyone up. He controlled that lineup. For 4 innings, he was locked in, on demand, in control. And man, Omar Lopez, the manager for Venezuela, did a masterclass in playing the matchups. There was really only one guy he brought in out of the bullpen that didn't work out, and that was the guy that got lit up by Bryce Harper, Machado. Aside from that, every move he made stifled the Team USA offense. On the flip side, though, the USA team deserves a lot of credit as well. Because under normal circumstances, if McLean gives up 2 runs and the U.S. offense actually does their job, they should have won the game. Phillies pitcher Brad Keller, good job last night coming in relief. The majority of the pitchers for Team USA did a good job. Just one guy, Whitlock, gave up a run late in the game. Suarez, he worked the count. He got the job done. But Team USA had one player last night who finished the game with 2 hits. It was Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper was the only guy who showed up for Team USA last night. And this is why people like myself look at these baseball players and we don't know what to do sometimes. You have literally an all-star lineup. There's at minimum 3 guys in this starting lineup who are probably going to go to the Hall of Fame one day. And maybe 2 others, depending on how their careers play out. And the young studs gave you zilch last night. Bobby Witt Jr. gave you nothing. Oh, congratulations. You walked once. Congratulations. You weren't totally a loser at life. Aaron Judge had 3 strikeouts last night. This guy's supposed to be one of the best hitters in all of planet Earth. Biggest game in WBC, gave you nothing. How about the Phillies' Kyle Schwarber? You know, the MVP runner-up last year, 3 strikeouts, 0 for. Alex Bregman, who purposely started because there was a left-hander on the mound, he goes 0 for 3 last night. The Red Sox young star, Roman Anthony, he goes 0 for 3. The catcher for the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, Will Smith, he goes 0 for 3. The only other guy not named Bryce Harper that got a hit last night was Bryce Turang. And in the later innings, Mark Durso tried to shake things up by bringing in Gunnar Henderson and Pete Armstrong to pinch hit when it was clear that Venezuela didn't want to burn through all their lefties in the bullpen. They couldn't do the job either. Team USA and every American baseball fan last night experienced firsthand the misery of every Philadelphia Phillies fan. All of you USA WBC fans know exactly how we feel. You have a team that should be getting hits, and instead they strike out, they ground out, they fly out at the worst possible times. That is the life of a Phillies fan for the last 4 years. And then you have one guy who hits in the game, and then nobody else does. That has been the storyline of the end of every Phillies season in the last 4 years. On the biggest stage, in the biggest moments, the Team USA lineup, which is pretty much all-stars, the entire lineup, they struggled against guys who, frankly, some of them don't even belong on Major League rosters. Eduardo Rodriguez is a journeyman, to put it nicely. Nobody looks at guys like Zerpa or Palencia and says, yeah, that guy's amazing. But those guys shut you down. And I'm having trouble, and maybe you guys can tell me at 609-403-0973 on the Whitehorse RV text board. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a hump day Wednesday. Why on earth, after that game, are we not more critical of the guys not named Bryce Harper? A lot of people on social media, and we had people texting in even the show yesterday saying, Bryce Harper shouldn't be in the lineup. Bryce Harper's going to lose this game for you. Bryce Harper's a failure. Harper showed up last night. He was clutch. He was Captain America for a moment in time. Nobody else did. Why is that? And frankly, I can't blame Durso, the manager, because I think he thought he was pushing all the right buttons. I think in his mind, him and his coaching staff, they thought they were doing the right thing. Hey, we have a left-handed pitcher on the mound. We're going to get some more righties in the lineup. Left-handed pitcher's not in the lineup anymore. We're going to pinch hit some left-handed guys. And again, I'm not saying people who pitch for Venezuela are bad. Okay, I know Palencia is a solid, good closer for the Cubs. But it felt like last night, Team USA completely and utterly choked. They did nothing last night. And Venezuela, you got to give them credit because they were struggling most of the night offensively. And they found a way. They got the job done. And listen, full credit to Venezuela. I mean, Eugenio Suarez, listening to him talk after the game to Ken Rosenthal on Fox, what an amazing moment. I mean, the guy was so grateful. He was talking about how blessed he is, how happy he is, how thankful he is. You know, what it means for Venezuela, what it means for his teammates. And, you know, it was just a lot of good vibes from the Venezuela team. They weren't puffing up their chest. They weren't pounding their chest. They weren't, they were not showing up anyone. They were just happy that they won. So, yes, good for Venezuela. Happy for him. You know what? This is a team that a lot of people discounted, myself included, because they did not have high-level pitching for the majority of the WBC aside from one guy. And they found a way. They endured. It wasn't the Dominican Republic. It wasn't Japan. It wasn't Puerto Rico. It was Venezuela that won the WBC. So I totally give them credit. But man, I got some PTSD after last night's game because as a Phillies fan, watching the Phillies choke away postseasons again and again, it was deja vu watching Team USA swing at balls out of the zone, strike. I mean, Aaron Judge and Kyle Schwarber both struck out 3 times. These are 2 guys who have been in the conversation for league MVP in recent years, and they couldn't get the job done. Get some of your texts on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0970. Don't forget Whitehorse RV Centers in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at Whitehorse RV. Jim in Williamstown says it seems like the South American teams all hit the cover off the ball. They may not be as well versed in the game itself when it comes to base running and knowing where they should be set up defensively, but they hit well enough to make up for it. Kudos to Venezuela. On another note, last week, I put 100 on Bryce Harper to be an MVP this year. Well, Jim, good luck with that. Could Harper win MVP? If the Bryce Harper that played last night shows up for the Phillies for 140 games this year out of 162, yes, he's winning MVP. But you're right. You know, the Venezuelan team might not be the best baseball IQ. But man, you're right. They did knock the cover off the ball last night. They really did go out there and assert themselves in a way that was incredibly impressive. Like I said, Venezuela definitely deserves credit. But I'm not going to make excuses for Team USA. Not going to do it. Can't do it. And you know what? Maybe the WBC, like Nick and Earnshaw talked about yesterday on the Nuggets segment, you know, maybe the WBC should be like in the Olympics, right? Maybe we need to get back to putting that in the Olympics. Maybe that should be the thing. But the players love this WBC, and that's part of the problem here. And that is the players love it. The players want it. But then as a fan, when you're watching it and you're like, you're getting shut down by Eduardo Rodriguez. This guy has trouble making a major league roster. You know, it reminds me of the GIF of Vince Lombardi. You know, what the heck is going on around here? That's kind of vibe I got last night. More text coming in at 609-403-0973. The Whitehorse RV text board is 609-403-0973. Stephen Bender says, my boy Byron Buxton didn't have a hit in the series. Buxton's another one. Buxton is a guy that a lot of people, if you're a Phillies fan, right, you were like, hey, you could go out and acquire a Byron Buxton. Maybe he could be your center fielder. Well, he didn't make it feel very good last night. If you were someone who looked at Buxton and was like, that guy can be a stud, yeah, you were wrong. And listen, I don't want to blame just one guy because I feel like it's way too easy to blame one person in these situations. You know, I tend to fall back on multiple people dropped the ball last night. That's at least how I feel about it. Multiple people didn't get the job done. But you know what? I am not the only one who is thinking this way. Kevin Clark was in on Unsportsmanlike this morning, 6:10 a.m. Eastern, here on 9.3 ESPN. And Kevin Clark is a football guy. For those who don't know. He's not even a baseball guy. And Kevin Clark, even he went out of his way to say this.
Aaron Judge is a choker, and he will never get the big hit. He has a mental block. Clearly, if he swings the bat, maybe it's different. He has a mental block. He got 3 pitches over the course of last night. If you look at the data, if you look at the charts, that he should have sent into Fort Lauderdale. And he just sat there waiting for another pitch.
Night, maybe, I don't know. It's certainly possible. Not gonna put that negative juju in the universe, but I'm just thinking out loud. Could there have been someone better than some of those guys who are on the roster? Maybe, I'm not sure. But Sharon EHC, you're definitely not wrong in your perspective. Let's squeeze in one more text before we get to the break and Mike McGarry on the other side. White Horse RV text board is open at 609-403-0973. Texture says, MLB teams cost Team USA the win when saying when and where players can and can't be used. Props to Venezuela manager, though he had some big rocks to steal second knowing he didn't have much pitching. Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of the conversation, Texture. You didn't leave your name, but I think it's a great point by you. It's the fact that teams like the Tigers said, Tarek Skubal, you can only pitch one game and you got to come back. Or a team like the Padres telling Mark DeRosa, you can't bring Mason Miller in to a tie game or a game you're losing. You could only bring him in if you have the lead. So the texter is right. There is an element to this where the major league teams interfered with the manager's ability to manage the game. Now, you could argue, though, texter, isn't that their right? Shouldn't a team that says, hey, I'm paying Tarek Skubal millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars, I need him to pitch for my team, not pitch for some World Baseball Classic? I think it's a very, very awkward dynamic. Look at a guy like Jose Luzardo. Luzardo said, well, I could have played for my home country, but I chose to stay in Phillies camp. I chose to go to spring training. There is that element as well. There is the element where you could argue that if you are a fan of the Tigers or the Phillies or the Dodgers or whoever, that you look around and you're like, I don't want my guy pitching in WBC. I remember a couple years ago, the last time WBC was, Trey Turner had an amazing WBC. And we were like all excited, like, this Trey Turner's going to be great for us. And then he comes to Philadelphia and he stinks up the joint for 3 months. You could even argue that maybe teams are saying, I don't want my guy wasting his best ability in this tournament. We'll ask Mike McGarry his thoughts coming up on the other side and more your texts as well throughout the show. The White Horse RV text board is open at 609-403-0973. 0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are streaming live on YouTube at 973 ESPN.
Hey, it's Mike Gill. Have you checked out the most loved Indian restaurant in South Jersey? The Nizam's Indian Restaurant on Route 40 in Egg Harbor Township is amazing and ready to serve you delicious Indian dishes. NJ.com ranked them the #2 best restaurant in all of New Jersey. At Nizam's, they believe that dining is more than just great food. It's the whole experience. The Nizam's open 7 days a week from 11:30 a.m. to 9:30. Join them for a special lunch buffet on Sundays from 11:30 to 3. Visit thenizams.com for more information.
You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
2:31 on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. We got more texts coming in. The White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Lots of opinions, lots of takes on the WBC last night. Only one guy showed up in that lineup, Bryce Harper. Crazy. The one guy who actually hadn't done much the whole WBC was the only guy who showed up last night. Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City joins us as he does each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, welcome in. How you doing on this Wednesday?
Doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. So last night we basically saw an all-star lineup get shut down by a journeyman pitcher in Eduardo Rodriguez. Harper, he did his Captain America thing near the end of the game, but all in all, I think it's fair to say, Mike, that Team USA choked last night.
Yeah, I don't know if that's fair to say, Josh. I mean, I could give you the old line. That's baseball when you see a pitcher come in and able to shut down a lineup like Venezuela did last night. I thought it was an entertaining game. I thought at times it was an entertaining tournament. And yes, I did look at it to see certain things from certain players. Bryce Harper in particular, I think he kind of saved himself with that home run in the eighth inning, the 2-run shot, which tied the game. But I'm not going to make any humongous judgments off players' careers and stuff like that over this. To me, again, I agree with Derek Jeter. People who think that the World Baseball Classic is bigger than the World Series or means more than the World Series or is a bigger stage than the World Series don't understand what the World Series is about and what the primary job of each and every Major League Baseball player is, regardless of what country they come from.
I hear you, Mike. I just think about it as, you have people who should be capable of doing more than they did. And I can't blame the manager. I think DeRosa was trying to do everything he thought was right. He's pitching who he's allowed to. He's saying, hey, I got a left-hander on the other side. I'm going to put righties in the lineup like Bregman. Didn't work out. Okay, I'll try to get Pete Crow Armstrong in here. I think DeRosa did everything he could last night, Mike. It's just the guys at the plate, like Judge and Schwarber and others. I mean, I don't think Buxton had hit the entire WBC. Like, at some point, it's like, hey, you guys are the ones who win and lose games, and last night you didn't give us enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that the lineup, the performance of the hitters was subpar. But the overall game goes back to my point about this WBC. And I see some talk of today about maybe playing the semifinals and the final during All-Star Week. To me, if you're going to have this tournament, shut baseball down for maybe 10 days, 11 days, 12 days in July over the All-Star break, and play the tournament then. Because no disrespect to Noah McLean, who is, a top prospect with the New York Mets. But you mean to tell me that the United States of America, in all its red, white, and blue glory, had nobody else to throw out there in a championship game to supposedly decide world baseball superiority than a guy from the New York Mets who had maybe 5 career starts last year, certainly no more than 10 career starts. So you got to tell me, and the guys they brought in out of the bullpen, we don't have better bullpen guys than that. So again, I don't think the tournament is a fair judge of, each team. I think it's a nice little entertaining thing. I think it provides some good moments. I think it gets excited people for the baseball season. But I don't think it goes anywhere near to judging who's got the best baseball players in the world.
Well, Mike, part of the problem is Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. It's what It's what Durso was trying to get at last night, but he was trying to dance around it in the post-game presser, where these major league teams are putting constraints on
absolutely
on who can be there, who can't. Like the whole Tariq Skubal thing, it's like Tigers were like, you only can go out there for one start. He pitched against Great Britain of all teams. So it's like that's part of the problem, and that is the players want to do it, Mike, but the major league teams who are paying the players tens of millions of dollars want nothing to do with it.
Absolutely, and that's why it's not real baseball, because even when the starting pitchers go out there, they're only throwing 3 innings or 4 innings. They're not going deep in games. That's why I say play it over the All-Star break or play it in November when the season is over for 10 days every 3 years. That would give you a clearer indication. I come back to just the fact, and look, Noah McLean, I'm excited to watch him pitch this year for the Mets. He's a top prospect, but what has he proven in the big leagues? Absolutely nothing, and that's who gets the ball for a championship game. There's nobody else in the United States of America that can take the ball in that game. I mean, that to me says all you need to know about the tournament. Again, entertaining, gets you kind of what's the appetite for the baseball season, provide some decent moments, a lot of drama last night. To see Venezuela's the reaction of the Venezuela players to winning the tournament was really incredible to see how much it meant to them. But it's not real baseball. And until it becomes real baseball, I can't sit here and say this is a black mark on the career of Bryce Harper. This is a black mark on the career of Aaron Judge. This is a black mark on the career of Noah McLean. This goes to manager Mark DeRosa. What is he doing? Until it becomes real baseball, I can't make real judgments about what it means. Can I be entertained by it? Absolutely. Did I enjoy watching some of the games? Absolutely. But what does it mean to the legacy of these players? To me, until it becomes real baseball, absolutely nothing. It would be like if you went to the Olympics and all of a sudden, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, none of them could play. Or they only played against, like you said, LeBron showed up and played against Great Britain and then didn't play against Serbia in the final. Until they figure this out, and again, played over the All-Star break every 3 years or play it in November, I can't take it seriously, and I can't even begin to compare it to the World Series.
By the way, speaking of baseball, the Phillies now have the full squad, right? Back with spring training a week before opening day. Does Mike McGarry have an overarching big question about the Phillies now that we are a week away from opening day?
Yeah, even though he hit the home run last night, my question is about Bryce Harper. I think he's one of the most interesting storylines that will be played out during this season. Is he elite or is he not elite? Was last year a down year for him? Was it because of injuries? Is it because of the way where he hits in the Phillies lineup? He did not look great early on in the baseball classic. He got better as the games progressed. He almost hit a home run the other night. He hit one last night. So there's positive signs are there. But to me, when you look at the Phillies, the biggest question they've got going into the season, again, to me, or the most fascinating storyline is probably a better way to say it. Not the biggest question. The most fascinating storyline is to see what kind of start Bryce Harper gets off to and how he looks early in the season.
If the Bryce Harper that played last night, right, Mike, the guy who showed up last night at the big moment, if he shows up for 130 games, 135 games of the Phillies this year, he probably is going to be, quote unquote, elite again. I think the biggest thing for Philly fans, as I was saying this earlier, Mike, it's the idea that when you need the guy to step up, right, is he going to be there? And what has happened with the Philly seasons? Every season, these postseasons have been deflating because when you need the big boys to step up, Mike, they haven't stepped up in the postseason.
Well, again, it's the last couple of postseasons, right? It's 23, 24, and 25. In 22, Harper and the guys were there. They took a very good Houston Astros team to Game 6 of the World Series before they fell. So yeah, but I would agree. And again, you felt like you were watching a little bit of a Phillies game last night, right? That game looked awfully familiar to Phillies fans, to where, you were getting an excellent pitched game by USA guys, but the USA lineup was just not producing when it would have seemed to be able to produce and hit, what was not, in most cases, top-line Venezuela pitching. So, yeah, interesting question to see how the Phillies come out this year. But, again, I think there's just questions about the team. Bryce Harper is a question, and then we'll see also how, the guys who have played well in spring training, and I'm thinking about Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott, are they finally able to take that next jump? Stott in terms of hitting for power and average, and Boehm in terms of hitting the ball over the fence, that we have all been waiting for them to take. Is this the year that Stott and Alec Boehm make a jump forward?
Well, you would think Boehm's got to, because he's going to be a free agent after the year. So this is put up or shut up time for Boehm, because he's got that free agency looming. Yeah, go ahead.
And Josh, too, just think about this. Again, it was sort of fait accompli. You mentioned Alec Boehm's impending free agency. It was just sort of fait accompli that, Alec Boehm was going to be, play third base this year, and then he was going to be let go at the end of the season or allowed to sign with another team because Aiden Miller was going to be ready to play, third base next year. Well, now Aiden Miller hasn't played all of spring because of a bad back, and is not going to be ready for the start of AAA season in next week also. So now the question is, it's not so sure. Alec Boehm, he might be the third baseman of the future, and he might be able to, make himself a ton of money with a big season this year.
That's certainly true. Hey, Mike, before I let you go, because we will not be on the radio next 2 days because of the March Madness. We'll have full-day coverage here on 97.3 ESPN wall-to-wall games from 12 p.m. to midnight. Does Mike McGarry have a favorite team or teams in this year's March Madness?
Yeah, excellent question. What's coming up, Josh, of course, is to me one of the best weekends of the year, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the NCAA tournament. I'll throw a couple of quick things for you right here. First of all, check out later online today at pressafac.com, and in tomorrow's paper, I have a column about the FDU women who are coached by Stephanie Gately, Ocean City native. They have 3 local players on the team, including Reese Downey of Absegami, our player of the year last year. She's a freshman at FDU. She's coming off the bench. She's gotten better as the year has gone on, really hitting some big 3-pointers for the Knights. And they go to Iowa on Saturday. FDU's a 15 seed. Iowa is a 2 seed. So if you're looking for a little local team in our area to root for, the FDU women certainly fit the criteria there. As far as the men, Josh, I have a theory, and I'll just throw this out there. I don't think there's going to be that many upsets this year. Last year, I think all 4 number ones made the Final Four. I think we could be headed down the same path this year, only because I think as college basketball pays players, the best players will go to the schools with the most money. The schools with the most money are your Dukes, your Michigans, your Arizonas, those types of teams. And I think college basketball is going to resemble the NBA in the fact that you see very few upsets in the NBA playoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised if college basketball followed the same path. I will give you one team to watch, and I think they open with Arkansas tomorrow, is Hawaii. Watch Hawaii. To me, they're a team that could upset a team or two in this NCAA tournament.
All right, there it is. Mike McGarry for the Press of Atlantic City. Check out all of his coverage at pressafac.com and, of course, at AC Press McGarry on the X platform. Mike, enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, Josh, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Back to the White Horse RV text board on the other side. And don't forget Geoff Kerr, Phillies insider for us at 97.3, will join us on the other side at 3 p.m. And speaking of the Phillies, your next opportunity to qualify for the giveaway, yes, you can go to the Phillies at Baltimore. The trip is yours we're going to give it to you, but you got to listen for that sounder. And when you hear the sounder, when I tell you to call, you could be a qualifier, and then you must be present at the Anchorage in Summers Point next Thursday, March 26th, for Phillies Opening Day. Enjoy Mike Gill and the Sports Bash. Hang out, watch the game, and you could win a Phillies trip to Baltimore. All that more still to come here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, we got a couple minutes before we hear the sounder here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. I didn't want to procrastinate. I wanted to get right to some of your texts. I always appreciate everyone who texts into the show. It's 609-403-0973. I know sometimes during the course of a busy show, the people who are listening who took the time to chime in, they kind of get lost in the sauce. But I am not going to let you guys get lost in the sauce today. A couple texts coming in I wanted to squeeze in here. Texas didn't leave their name, but they said that the fact that the USA players took the medals off as soon as they put it. Actually, it's a bad job by me. I should have reread that text and realized that the text didn't make sense. Texter who didn't leave your name, try texting without voice text because that text made no sense. Another text chimed in, which I did read earlier. It says, Aaron Judge had an opportunity to tie the game in the sixth opportunity to hit the go-ahead home run after Harper, and he choked the game away. You can't win games that way. He goes on to say, why not chase Elliott for manager? Listen, I don't think DeRosa was the problem last night. I think the problem last night was the players. I can't blame DeRosa for Judge striking out 3 times, Schwarber striking out 3 times, and Byron Buxton doing nothing. Jackie McCordell says, don't send your players to all if you're going to pick and choose when they should or shouldn't play. You can't play ball when you're needed, then make a lot of money, and then think there's a reason why you should be playing to make millions of dollars, then be told, I can't play anyway. Yeah, the whole thing also, Jack, the whole getting hurt situation, guys get hurt in spring training. Like, I hate the idea that this isn't football. This isn't a sport where guys get injured due to freak accidents during the course of a game. All right, your next opportunity to qualify for the Phillies trip giveaway is right now. There's the sounder. Here's the deal. I'm giving you guys more opportunities today. Mike Gill isn't here. I'm here giving you opportunities. You want to go on this Phillies trip? Let's go. 609-573-3776. You're a qualifier, and you're a qualifier. Everybody who gets through today is a qualifier. You want to go to that Phillies trip to Baltimore? All you got to do is call 609-573-3776 and then be in attendance next Thursday at the Anchorage in Summers Point when Mike Gill and the Sports Bash broadcast live for Phillies Opening Day. All you got to do, call in, get through at 609-573-3776, and then be in attendance next Thursday at the Anchorage in Summers Point. Josh Hennig, Phillies for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. Geoff Kerr talks more Phillies with it next on 97.3.
home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They got him again!
Sixers.
Bang! It's good! Ball game!
And Flyers.
Tipped in front of the net!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill, Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Congratulations to our latest qualifiers, Warren and KMA Courthouse, Brandon and Atco. You both are in the mix. You are in. You're qualified for the Phillies trip to Baltimore giveaway. Keep it tuned for the next opportunity. When you hear that sounder later this hour, we're doing it every hour. You get through on the phone lines, you're in as a qualifier for the Phillies trip giveaway. And of course, you must be present for Phillies opening day next Thursday at the Anchorage in Summers Point when Mike Gill and the Sports Bash broadcast live. And of course, if you haven't qualified, you can still come out, be in attendance, and have opportunities to win other prizes. Again, you must be present to win anything. You can't win anything by just saying, I like the Sports Bash. No. Got to be there. Got to come by. Got to say hello. Got to hang out with the people. Anchorage, Summers Point, next Thursday. Speaking of the Phillies, we'll get into the Phillies conversation right now. Now the WBC is done, we can get back to, I don't know, do we call it real baseball? We'll ask Geoff Kerr what he thinks. Joining us, our Phillies insider with 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Geoff Kerr will be covering the Phillies all season long and join the Sports Batch each and every week. Geoff, how you doing on this Hump Day Wednesday?
This is the worst week of the season, Josh, for a baseball fan like me.
You
really
just came out of the gates firing.
It is. Like, you look at today's live, it's like Andrew Painter's pitching. You kind of know what you got in Otto Kemp, Brian De La Cruz. Unfortunately, Dylan Moore got hurt today. But really, it's just who's coming back to Philadelphia. And you got a couple days to figure it out. You got to the 21st to figure out Dylan Moore. But besides that, just get me to March 26th.
Well, you just mentioned who's coming to Philadelphia. So if Dylan Moore is injured, we'll start with that, Geoff. Who is coming to Philadelphia? Because I think a lot of people have been trying to figure out who is or isn't going to fill the back end of this roster. You know, a lot of speculation about Garrett Stubbs, his role in the team. You mentioned Dylan Moore. So for you, who are like the absolute yeses and who are still the question marks on the back end of this roster? Because again, I think what people don't understand, we all think Justin Crawford's going to be here, but he's not on the 40-man roster, Geoff.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But he will be. But yeah, that's all roster gymnastics right there. But Dylan Moore, I mean, you have to figure out by March 21st because he has an opt-out on his contract. So he has to know if he's going to be on this team by March 21st. That would be Saturday, Josh? Am I correct on that? Yeah, Saturday.
What day is it?
March 21st. That's a Saturday, right?
21st is a Saturday, yes.
Yeah. So he has to know if he's going to be on this team by Saturday. But if he's hurt and has an IL stint, and you buy yourself some time. And Rob Thompson wants position flexibility with that last bench spot, that fourth bench spot. Does Garrett Stubbs really come into play? He didn't lead off today. He's playing third base. He's gotten some balls in the outfield recently. They really going to carry three catchers on this roster? I don't know, because I think Brian De La Cruz is doing a good job, but he doesn't have an opt-out on his deal until July. And Lehigh needs outfielders, and he needs regular at-bats. So could it really be Garrett Stubbs?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't think it's crazy to think that Stubbs is not going to be on the team to start the season for a variety of reasons. But let me ask you, Geoff, what do you think this organization values the most from these guys? And I ask that because, you know, the fan might look at the team one way, but I want to know, what do you think the Phillies are actually looking at the roster as?
I think they're looking at position versatility, which is why when I did my last 26-man roster projection, and again, I'm probably going to come out with one later this week. I was depending on the right time. It's probably got to be before March 21st, right?
Right.
So, I mean, my pick was Dylan Moore. It's been trending that way because he could play every position. He's played every position in the majors but catcher. And that's why I gave Stubbs the benefit of the doubt and them the benefit of the doubt, because Stubbs can at least do it. Brian De La Cruz can play left and right field, and I think he's hit his way onto this team. But Lehigh needs outfielders. He needs at-bats. He's not getting him as a fourth outfielder here or a fifth outfielder, I guess, in this term, because you have Otto Kemp, right? And they want another Otto Kemp type player. That's where I think Stubbs and Moore fall in line here. And like you said, you got to put Justin Crawford on the 40-man roster too. So there's going to be some roster gymnastics there, but really it comes down to, will Dylan Moore make this team by Saturday? And if Dylan Moore's fine, I think he's good.
So if Dylan Moore makes the team, let's just go down that rabbit hole for a minute, okay? So what do you think is going to be what is his role versus Otto Kemp? Because I feel like there might be a little bit of a duplicity there, right? Like you have two guys who kind of basically play the same handful of positions, right?
Yeah. So if the Phillies want to put in a defensive replacement late in the game, I have a feeling it'd be Dylan Moore over Otto Kemp. Just out of, just from watching Otto Kemp. And that's not a knock on Otto. It's Otto's there for his bat. Dylan Moore's there for his glove. He's a Gold Glove utility infielder. So you can play him at third base late in the game if you want to take Albom out. You can have Dylan Moore pinch run. Dylan Moore can play a defensive replacement in the outfield. I don't think they're going to use Otto Kemp for that, at least in the ninth inning. But Otto Kemp's there to match left-handed pitching, and he's done a good job of that this spring. But yeah, it does feel, you're right, Josh. Optics-wise, or on the outside, it looks like it's the same guy. But they're different players.
We made the joke yesterday, Geoff. Let me ask you, and obviously we say a little tongue-in-cheek, but how much did Rojas do the Phillies a favor, quote-unquote, by getting a PED suspension?
I think he was in the mix until that suspension hit and before he was appealing it, because I think they could have kept him as a 26-man and just had him as a pinch runner and a defensive replacement late in games, because you need a player like that. And look, before all this, I thought maybe he was in the mix with Dylan Moore, because if I'm correct, he doesn't have any options left. I could be wrong on that. I got to double check that, but Ear has no options or one left. So, but he was in consideration. Then if they wanted to get him every day at bats, he would have been the center fielder in Lehigh Valley. But I think they envisioned a different role for him. So in a way, he kind of did do him a favor by doing what he did, unfortunately. It's a shame because I felt they rushed him up, and I try to tell people this. They were so desperate to find an outfielder 3 years ago that they brought him up, and he hit 300, but it didn't feel like 300. And then he goes 4 for 48 in the postseason or something like that. It was really bad. And he never fully recovered, but I always felt he had potential if things went right, but it looks like his time with this club is over.
Talking with Geoff Kerr, our Phillies insider for 97.3 ESPN, joining us here on 97.3. Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash at Geoff Kerr PHL on the X platform. Speaking of the outfield, so let's say, God forbid, something does happen, right? Let's say a Marsh or a Garcia or a Crawford get hurt. Who's the guy then the Phillies that you think would call up? Like, has Dante Nori done anything in WBC to make you say, hey, maybe that's a guy? Or, we've heard the name Rincones for about 10 million years at this point. So, what is the guy doesn't make the team but could be the guy called up down the road?
I think Rincones would be the first one if his knee gets right and he gets his regular bats in AAA, which is, I'm assuming, is going to happen. I think people got pumped the brakes on Dante Nori a bit. Yeah, great WBC, but before the WBC and the Fall League last year, he couldn't hit a lick in the minors, and he's only played 5 games at Reading. He's supposed to start in Reading. I think he's going to get at least half the year there, and if he hits 300 with some power, I think you'll see him move up. I think you'll fast track him. He has changed his swing, so. But I just feel like sometimes we get too excited, right? He's hitting well in the WBC. It is a small sample size. Like, everybody wants to rip on Harper and Judge. It is still a small sample size, and people kind of contradict their own opinions when, look what Bryce Harper did in the WBC Final. I agree with you, but before that, really wasn't doing much. So It's a small sample size. I want to see what Dante Nori does with 2.5 months in Reading before we decide. Let's bring him up to AAA and let's get him to the majors.
get to the pitching staff here, Geoff. Andrew Painter looked good today, at least all the reports say he is, because, God forbid they put a game on television in our own market. But I love when they put the post out. It's like, you can listen to the game. It's like, no, I want to see Andrew Painter. Like, such laziness by these. But anyway, I digress. So, Painter apparently looked really good today, according to everybody on the X platform who was watching the game, because I can't watch the game because I apparently live in South Jersey, and that's a no-no for us. So Painter, the velocity is there. I think that's the big takeaway for a lot of people, Geoff. So Painter up. What is the expectation? Not the Mike Gill putting lofty expectations on Andrew Painter. I mean the realistic expectation for Andrew Painter in 2026.
What's more realistic right now, Josh? Mike Gill working for 2 straight weeks, or Andrew Painter having that season? I had to get my shot in, but no, seriously. As
long as you take the shot when he comes back next week.
Exactly. I'm getting it next week. I guarantee you, he won't let me forget that one, because he will be working 2 straight weeks and then some. But.
Exactly.
Anyway, but look, Andrew Painter. I don't have the Mike Gill expectations for Andrew, but if you told me he'd finish 12-8 with a 3.5 to 4 ERA and struck out 150 in 140 innings, maybe more than that, well to 50, would you take that? I would take that.
Listen, I'd be fine with that. I still am of the opinion, and I've been consistent on this, and this is where Mike and I disagree. I think we're still a year away from who Andrew Painter is going to be. I think not 2026, but 2027 is when you see the real Andrew Painter. I think this year is going to be like he'll have like a 3.5 ERA, because he'll have like 3 games where he'll be like elite. He'll have 3 games where he'll look like a mess. You know what I mean? And then the rest of the games kind of just be like, kind of like, solid, because I just am not going to put high expectations on a young guy who is 3 years removed from Tommy John surgery?
Exactly. Like, everybody wants to compare him to Paul Skeens and Nolan McLean. That's fine, but they didn't have what Andrew Painter had.
Right.
And they haven't had to recover from what Andrew Painter had. And yes, could Andrew Painter be better? Absolutely. But you got to remember, 3 years ago, he was throwing 99, 100 effortlessly. He's still trying to get back to that. And today was a great sign. Like, you're throwing 96 consistently in the 4th inning, and you're throwing 50 to 60 pitches, and that average fastball velocity is staying around the same. That's what you want to see. Like you said, Josh, the velocity's up. He throws more of that changeup now. He throws more of that hard slide. That slider's going to be a dangerous pitch for him, by the way. That's in the low 90s already. Look, I think you're going to see glimpses this year. I think you're going to see some struggles, but I think you're going to see glimpses. And then he's 22. In 2027, I agree with you. I think you're going to see that Andrew Painter we're all expecting. It's just there's so much hype built around this guy because of how good he's been, but we just haven't been able to see it because really he hasn't pitched in 3 years. I mean, he pitched last year, but it was more of getting the command back. Well, I think the command is starting slowly to come back. And look, he could be a real asset for this team come August and September.
Speaking of coming back, what about Zach Wheeler? When can we actually expect to see him? Because, on one hand, I understand the Phillies don't want to rush him back, but Wheeler ain't exactly like, lollygagging through this rehab. He's not, he ain't on cruise control. He's full speed ahead, it looks like.
Yeah, and knowing Zach Wheeler, he didn't want to miss one start. I mean, he's going to miss opening day. There's no doubt about that. Look, I think he's back by mid-April. And my target date before spring training was May 1st. That's realistic and optimistic. Now, mid-April seems like that's going to be it. So, may miss 2 starts at max. Man, the Phillies are going to be set here. And Taijuan Walker's going to pitch a couple starts. That's what I'm curious about. When Zach comes back, what are you going to do with Taijuan? Like, is he going to go back to the bullpen? Or are you going to have to, send down a Chase Shugart or someone like that to make room for Taijuan Walker? They're going to need a 6-man rotation at some point this year. So you got to keep Taijuan Walker stretched out, right?
Right. And I think the bullpen thing is the other part of the conversation because we know who the main guys are, right? It's Duran, it's Keller, it's Kerkering, Alvarado, Banks. And it's like, and I mean, based on the Phillies social media obsession, Kyle Backus is going to make the roster. So, where does Walker fit into a bullpen that you can't keep everybody out there?
Oh, I would agree. And look, part of this has to do, too, will Orion Kerkering be ready by opening day? He's had his control issues, but he's been pitching better the last couple times he's been out there. Or Zach Pop, do you give him an opportunity and just say, hey, Orion, just get us a start or two, and not a start or two, but, an appearance or two in Lehigh, and then we'll bring it back. It's, they can afford themselves some time here. I always try to tell people, opening day is not finite, right? This isn't week 1 of the NFL. It's, you're not only playing 17 games here. You got 162. You got to think about that.
Even week 1 of the NFL is not always the roster that's by the end of the season, as you know.
Yeah. You always get those guys that are like, they either have to be on the roster week 1 or they're not getting a guaranteed salary. Remember Marcus Wheaton got that in 2018? Played one game and he got I think it was like AR90K or something.
Good for him.
What a life, man.
Good for him. That's what I say. By the way,
that's what I say. Good for those guys.
Anyone whose name's Zach Pop, I just can't take you seriously.
Even though he's a pitcher.
I don't care. It's just Zach Pop. Like I need more information about his last name. I've heard a lot of weird last names, but Pop, really?
You've seen Seinfeld, right?
I mean, I'm not as well versed as Mike Gill is, so.
Okay, well, Mike would be laughing at this when the librarian's name is named Bookman. That's like an ice cream server named Cone. That's Zach Pop.
Yeah, exactly. Pop the glove, buddy.
Yeah. And you know what?
Actually, you know what? He maybe should have been a catcher because then he could really pop the glove.
Yeah, he can have the pop time. Yeah, like literally, you can make the graphics for. But here's the thing, I misread Zach Pop's contract because I thought he was making $2 million. This was about a month or two ago, and then I heard it was $890K. I'm like, oh, that changes things because it's all guaranteed if he makes the major league roster, but makes the minor league, he's not getting $890K. At least I don't think
he doesn't get anything.
Yeah, so I'm curious too because Lehigh's gonna have a very deep bullpen. They're gonna have arms in this bullpen all year. It's just a matter of who's going where. And will Chase Shugart or Zach Pop want to stay here, or will they look for opportunities elsewhere? That's the decision they got to make on Dylan Moore. And eventually over the summer with Brian De La Cruz, that they don't see, if Brian De La Cruz is hitting 300 in Lehigh and it's mid-July when it's his time, you would think he's going to look for a major league opportunity if he doesn't get one here.
Couple more for Geoff Kerr. Of course, covers the Phillies for us at 97.3 ESPN, joining us each week here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Speaking of pitching, I got to ask you about WBC last night because, never in my wildest dreams did I think Eduardo Rodriguez was going to shut down Team USA. I mean, this guy could barely keep on a major league roster, but yet he goes out there as 4 great innings. And a Venezuelan team that has been slugging their way to the championship game gets pitching last night. And I just can't get away from, Geoff, that I said the first hour, that lineup top to bottom, all-star, and Aaron Judge, 3 strikeouts, Kyle Schwarber, 3 strikeouts. They had 3 hits all night. 2 of them were by Bryce Harper. At some point, it's I can't blame the manager when the hitters don't do their job.
I honestly blame the way we play baseball, right? This is the product of launch angle. This is the product of uppercutting. It's feast or famine, right? Bryce Harper got a pitch middle in and drilled it, but it seems like that was the U.S.'s philosophy. Let's hit the ball hard. Let's hit it as far as we can out of the as much as I like hearing about exit velocity, do I care if you hit the ball hard? Really? You can hit the ball hard right at the second baseman, still an out. I don't know. I just don't like the way we play baseball compared to the way other countries play baseball. And I think we are steering back to, as a country, it's more about doubles. It's more about OPS. It's more of putting the ball in play. But you saw that generation last night. Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, Pete Crow Armstrong didn't play. I don't know why. Gunnar Henderson didn't play. I don't know why. But Alex Bregman's part of that. Bryce Harper's even a part of that, right? They went 4 for 48 after the Roman Anthony home run, and 3 of those hit in the semis, and 3 of those hits were Phillies. That to me is astounding. How do you hit less than 100 with that team?
Well, look at Byron Buxton. The guy didn't get a hit on the entire WBC. It's like
Byron Buxton is one of those players I don't understand why people think he's good. I don't. I just don't see it. I don't know.
You know what Byron Buxton is, Jeff? He's the guy at the combine. He runs really fast. He jumps really high. You know, he's oh my goodness. Who was the receiver? I think it was from Maryland. Remember
Darius
Hayward Bay? Yes.
Yep.
That's who Buxton reminds me of. He's like a better version of Darius Hayward Bay. He's got all the physical tools, but he almost never puts it together.
I mean, he is like that prototypical 5-tool player. It's just, and I know he had a career high in home runs last year, and he slugged high and all that. And he steals a lot of bases, but there's just something about him. Even when he was a prospect, I'm like, maybe it's just me. I don't see it. I just don't. I think he's an okay player. I think he's a major leaguer, but to start for Team USA in the finals of the WBC with that loaded lineup, man, I just didn't. I don't know.
Hey man, you're along with a lot of people. A lot of people are looking after that game last night, wondering what the heck happened. People are saying Aaron Judge choked. People are saying that the Venezuelan team outplayed you. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to take anything away from Venezuela. Good for them. It was very the Suarez conversation with Ken Rosenthal after the game, that was heartwarming. It was great stuff last night. But man, I kind of want my Team USA to put up more than 2 runs. That's how I look at it.
And you know what? It's been tough, right? US won 17. They were basically a hit away from winning in 23, and they were a home run away from tying it up last night. They've been close. It's first, second, it's better than before when they could barely get out of the second round, if they got out of the second round of this thing. So, I mean, it is progress, but this was the team, right? This was the team that was supposed to win it all. And look, I'm happy they got to the final because they did beat a really good Dominican Republic team. But Venezuela did all the right things. I had not expected them to pitch well last night. I thought that they would have to score 4 or 5 runs to win this game. Turns out they only needed 3. I'm happy for those guys. Gino Suarez, Ranger Suarez. I mean, I'm sure Jesus Luzardo probably wished that he could have pitched for Venezuela last night.
Luzardo chose not to go. We should point that out.
Yeah. I mean, I think, he had 127 million reasons not to go, I think.
Well, listen,
million reasons.
I look at it like this. There were a lot of guys who went, and there were a lot of guys who didn't went. And some of them went because they were allowed to, and some of them, like Tariq Skubal, were basically told, come back as soon as possible.
I did not like how Skubal handled that thing at all. He goes and pitches, 60, 70 pitches in a spring training game, but he wants to be in the dugout for the WBC final. I don't know. There were so many things about this team that it just wasn't likable, from comments they made to DeRosa's blunders, Skubal doing what he's doing. And look, this is where I will defend DeRosa. If the Padres are telling you don't use Mason Miller, and that's your country's philosophy, his hands are tied. If I was DeRosa, I would say, I don't care about you right now. I'm trying to manage this team in 3 years.
Well, the other thing is, if you're DeRosa, you got to go to Miller and be like, look, man, if you're here, you're pitching. If you're not,
exactly.
If you're not pitching, go home.
Same with Skubal. You're here. No, I need you. You're part of this team, and I feel like.
But to me, the Miller thing looks worse because Miller's in the bullpen. He's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's available.
Skubal's on the bench at least, looking like he's what's the term they use? Sneaker day versus cleat day. He at least looks like he's having a sneaker day. Skubal's on the bullpen, sitting there twiddling his thumbs, waiting for opportunity. It looks bad that Miller's in the bullpen. Just don't even put him out there. Let him hide in the dugout or something.
And then they tell you he's available in only a certain situation, but
right.
It's a tie game in the 9th inning, and he's your closer. By the book, not by the book. You throw him because there's no tomorrow. There's no guarantee that you're going for a safe situation. Oh, by the way, you were the home team last night, so you weren't going for a safe situation once the 9th inning started.
Oh, and by the way, don't forget the Venezuelan team had the Cubs closer come into the game. And I'm not saying that kid is great, but I mean, he's valuable enough to the Cubs. The Cubs could have done the same thing to him as the Padres did to Mason Miller, but they didn't because, and I think that's the problem, Jeff. Well, before I let you go, it's the idea that the other countries' players, this means everything to them. Venezuela, Correct. Dominican Republic, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Japan. for the American team, it means way more to the players than it does to anybody else. And I think the problem is that the American baseball people don't understand the value of this.
Yeah. I just don't like the whole I don't care about the World Baseball Classic. I look, and that's a lot of people's mentality about it. It's like you said, Josh, Venezuela, that was everything to them. That is the World Cup. Japan, that is the World Cup. That is their opportunity to show they are the best baseball team in the world. And our guys produce the best players in the world. The U.S. treats it like a glorified exhibition. And look, Bryce Harper was upset last night. They lost. You could see that. Kyle Schwarber, he barely wore the medal. I think there are a lot of players that care, but I think it's what's around them and how we treat it. It doesn't matter. Well, no, you wouldn't say that if the U.S. won the thing. It's a mentality. That's what I don't like. Like, I think Venezuela would have been proud they came in second, but I guarantee you they'll be partying for weeks because they won this thing.
Yeah, they'll be partying like it's 1969, basically.
Yeah. I mean, look, they had a great tournament. They did. It's like, if I did power rankings going to the tournament, I think Venezuela, I would rank them like 5th or 6th. That's an upset.
Yeah, and it's because they didn't have the pitching, and it didn't matter because the U.S. team had hit anyway. So, you know what? Good for Venezuela. That's what I say.
I'm happy for it. I really am.
At Geoff Kerr PHL on the X platform, all of your Phillies coverage over at the Substack. And, of course, he joins the Sports Bash each week here on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff, when you join us again next week, Mike Gill will be back, I promise.
Oh, he better be back because that's when Phillies Today starts. He better be back.
I cannot speak to what I don't know about. I don't know there's a layer of what they call it, I'm on a need to know basis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what? I always try to tell people this in life. Sometimes you're better off not knowing anything because then when you have to lie, you're actually telling the truth.
Right, exactly. It's like people ask us certain questions. I'm like, I literally don't know. Like, people will ask me certain things. I literally don't know. That is not my realm.
Yeah, exactly. Like, look, I watch the Flyers. I like hockey. If someone asked me to name a random player, I probably couldn't tell you the team. It's just the reality of it.
Hey, as long as you have the self-awareness, then you're good. Can't speak for anybody else, right?
Yep, exactly. I look, I know a little bit about everything, but that doesn't mean I know everything.
Exactly. Geoff, great stuff. Take care, man.
It sounds great. Thanks, Josh.
Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, 3 o'clock hour of the Bash, being brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadleys is your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadleys.net. Coming up next, Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw joined us a little early today on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
This is breaking news on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
Josh Hennig live at 97.3 ESPN studios. For today's Knicks Nuggets, we have breaking news. The Eagles have made a trade, but it's not who you think it's going to be. Oh, man. I know Nick Earnshaw is so excited but not excited about this breaking news because Nick Earnshaw, the Eagles, traded for a backup quarterback. Take it away, Nuggets.
You know, I'm sitting here, I'm getting ready for the Nuggets, and then we get a breaking news nugget. The Philadelphia Eagles have traded for the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton. 2027 7th round pick going back to the Carolina Panthers.
I mean, talk about I get the breaking news thing on my phone. I'm like, the Eagles make a trade. I'm like, what's the deal here? What's going on? And then
I'm so glad you came out of the break with the breaking news sounder. You set everybody up with, they made a trade, and it's not the big dance of the trades that we were waiting for.
Yeah, literally, here's the alert on my phone, how it was verbalized. You ready? It says, the Philadelphia Eagles are trading draft picks for quarterback per sources. Then you click on the thing and it says the details. Oh, no, it's Andy Dalton. It's a 7th round pick. Like, now, let me ask you, why do the Eagles feel the need to acquire Andy Dalton of all people? Like does Sam Howell mean that much? Is Tanner McKee out the door? Like, I need a little more information here.
Yeah, I wonder what this means for Tanner McKee. Did they really like what they saw last year, right? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Were they like, didn't love the way he played in that final game to get us up into the 2 seed? I think we actually need another backup quarterback behind Jalen. Let's get an experienced guy in the Red Rifle and Andy Dalton.
Or, let me ask you this question. Is Andy Dalton here to help with the offense? Translation.
Interesting. Is there a Sean Mannion connection anywhere? That's what I want to figure out. Is there a Mannion connection? Is there a Grizzard connection?
Well, if you go through Dalton's history, by the way, for those who don't know, so as of right now, the Eagles quarterback room is Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, and Andy Dalton. Those are the 3 who are in the building. But I would say that Dalton and Mannion never played together, as far as I know, okay?
Right.
But there might be a connective tissue when it comes to the style of the offense, right? You know, there might be I'm kind of going through Dalton's history right now to see the coaches. I mean, Dalton did play for Kellen Moore, but that's not Sean Mannion.
No.
Let me see who else here.
I can't wait for football at 4. I'm excited to hear what Mosher has to say to break this trade down because this is a fascinating trade. I mean, they didn't really give up anything. They gave up a 7th round pick. Andy Dalton's on an expiring contract. He's in the final year of a 2-year extension. He signed with the Carolina Panthers. So this is interesting, to say the least. I
mean, listen, even if he didn't have a direct connection, you could argue that Dalton has played in pretty much every offense known to man at this point. So for him, it's probably like it's all the same, you know?
Yeah, my question just goes right to what you said. And what does this mean for Tanner McKee? Like, is he at the door? Do they have a trade lined up for him? Or is this just another, we like to have a lot of talent in the quarterback factory of the quarterback room here at no longer called the NovaCare Complex.
Listen, it's not a great quarterback draft class. So
no.
I wouldn't be surprised if Howie is, priming the wheel for someone to come along and basically say, hey, we could, we don't like, or maybe not like, but maybe it's the idea of, let's say you're a team and you're really high on Ty Simpson or you're really high on whoever, and then you don't get your guy. Is Tanner McKee somebody's backup plan?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm very curious. And we know in Philadelphia, the backup quarterback position, very important position for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they value that very highly. So I'd assume he'd be over Tanner McKee. It would make sense, right? Like he would be second.
Oh, 100%.
I don't think Tanner played that well last year. I don't think he did anything to deserve the backup quarterback spot.
He did have a regression. But I still ask how much of that was the play caller, right? How much of that, if Is it a coincidence that McKee looked solid with Kellen Moore, but not so good with Patullo? I mean,
yeah, it's fascinating, and he's in the final year of his deal. So they have 2 expiring contracts at the second and third string quarterback position.
Listen, I would not be surprised one bit, not one bit, if here's what happens. The Eagles trade Tanner McKee for a 3rd-round pick, and then on day 3 of the draft, they draft Taylor Green of Arkansas. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Gotta love the quarterback factory that Howie Roseman runs with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not the granddaddy of them all, but it's a move. It's a trade that the Eagles have made today.
All right, well, that's the breaking nugget. So back to normal Knicks Nuggets here on 97.3 ESPN. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing okay. Last night was tough. It was awesome. Bryce was awesome that he came through in the clutch. 8th inning, 2-run bomb to center field. It was awesome. The euphoria of the whole thing. And then the 9th inning happened. Whitlock comes in, leadoff walk. When you walk the first batter of the inning, that things happen. All right, that gives up the double. And sayonara, that was it. Tyler Rogers comes in, finishes out the inning. And then in the 9th, the bottom half, it goes awry. Nothing going for the I thought it was the Philadelphia Phillies.
I was going to say it might as well be the Phillies because that's what the Phillies do every postseason.
It's funny. The Philly actually came through for when they needed him to, and the other guys just did not. And the U.S. falls to Venezuela in the WBC. Now, with that being said, this was an awesome WBC. It was electric all over the place. It's a shame that the U.S. did not win. To see Bryce finally connect on a big home run, a big moment. He has more of a clutch gene than Aaron Judge. I will stand by that, and I'll continue to stand by that. I've said it for years and years and years. Aaron Judge has no clutch gene. He'll hit you a couple of home runs in the first and second inning in a big game, maybe, if that. Last night, he didn't even get a hit. So the captain was nowhere to be found, and we should have known that when he gave that speech, that the no energy speech in the beginning of the whole WBC. But that's another story for another day. USA loses, and listen, overall, it was a great tournament. And I think baseball's in a great, great place. And I see the discussion on social media already ramping up. Man, baseball's in a good spot. It would be a shame if they stopped playing.
Yeah. That was a conversation we're having last night on SportsCenter with Tim Kirch and Scott Van Pelt about, you don't want to have a stoppage to lose this momentum, man. And, by the way, can I say it really quick?
Sure.
One other point about last night's game. It's not that you just didn't hit. You didn't hit against a journeyman.
Eduardo Rodriguez, dude, he pitched unreal. He looked like an ace of all aces last night.
That's probably the best game he's had in his life.
Well, it came in the right spot for your country in the championship final of a WBC. I mean, it came in a great moment. So shout out to him. He pitched unbelievably. I mean, he was getting weak contact. I mean, guys were not squaring up the baseball last night at all. No. He was generating a lot of weak contact, getting guys out. And the U.S., I mean, the offense really never came around at all. And you thought, all right, you think Venezuela, I mean, the bullpen's been really good, but you could probably get on the board with Eduardo Rodriguez starting, and that just didn't happen.
No, not at all.
So I think
very disappointing.
Yeah, and I think when you start a New York Met in the final game of a championship, that also doesn't help either. Even though he pitched fine, fine.
But see, here's the thing: he allowed 2
I'm just
runs.
kidding. I had to get a little.
Normal game when you have that lineup, you should have scored 6 runs last night.
Yeah, no doubt. I didn't love a lot of the at bats. They were generating weak contact, and they just couldn't get in a groove. And the U.S. found a way to get to the final, and Venezuela was hot. They did what they needed to do. The pitching was unbelievable. Eduardo was outstanding. I mean, sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team too. Like we always want to say, they stunk. They were awful, which is part of it. But also Venezuela shut the doors on the U.S. offense other than Bryce.
Yeah, it's true. What else you got for us today, Nick?
All right. Nugget number 2. I don't know if you saw this on PFT earlier on Pro Football Talk. Don't have the audio, but I will say, I want to say something that Mike Florio put out just a little bit ago on Pro Football Talk. He talked about A.J. Brown, that the Rams, they got scared off by preliminary medical research done on A.J. Brown. And it's nothing that is, I guess you could say when he was talking about, I'm paraphrasing, when Florio was talking about it, he said the Rams weren't in love, essentially, with some of the medical issues that have come up in AJ's career with the hamstring injury. And it's just general research at his age with hamstring injuries could lead to soft tissue down the line. The Rams said, nada, we're not going to go that route. I wonder how much that plays a factor in all the other teams that have not traded for A.J. Brown. I understand the Eagles' perspective and the money aspect of the cap, but I wonder how much that plays a factor into a lot of teams. If Florio's putting this out and he's reporting that the Rams kind of said, we're good.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you see the Max Crosby rant from his podcast?
Yes, I did see bits and pieces of it, yes.
So, for those who don't know, Max Crosby has a podcast because, everybody's got a podcast.
Everyone's got one. A player podcast. Me and you actually, we watch them, unlike our famous world traveler and Mike Gill. We have to watch the player podcast for him because he can't stand him, which I understand where he's coming from.
But anyway, so, I'm watching Crosby's rant, and I totally understand where he's coming from because Crosby's position, for those who don't know, he had surgery from a very, very famous doctor. And basically, the doctor gave him like A+, like, hey, your recovery is going better than I expected, right? But then the Baltimore doctors threw up red flags. And Crosby basically called it BS and so on and so forth. Are we now entering an era where teams are going to use medicals as excuses to not trade for or pay players, even if those players are healthy? But the team will say, well, our doctors flagged him.
Yeah, I hope we're not starting a big trend with the Crosby stuff. And then you hear this AJ stuff, right? Like, and I think you bring up a good point, Josh. It's like, okay, if we think, he's healthy right now. He's had a couple of hamstring issues. But, down the line, our doctors say that could lead to more soft tissue, could lead to an ACL. We're not going to take a chance on it. That could turn ugly very fast. Very fast, especially coming from the players union. And if they're going to go this route and saying, well, he could have a problem, maybe because of this, possibly because the way Florio was talking about it, it was just kind of general research, like just because of the age he's at, and they don't want to invest to where he's at in his career. I mean, he's like in his mid to late 20s. It's not like he's 30 yet, which is it's wild. And I think the players, if this starts happening, they're going to get ticked off, and that's going to be something you're going to watch for down the line in CBA negotiations, etc.
Yeah, I think that with J.C. Treader now being the new NFLPA executive, I think that's going to probably be a conversation point. It's going to be, hey, do we have a problem here with these doctors not willing to clear players and using that as an excuse? We already have a lot of chicanery that goes on when it comes to these injury reports. Remember the whole Lamar Jackson thing last year where it's like, oh, no, he's playing. And it's like, oh, no. He wasn't practicing. He was on the scout team.
Yep.
Like, it's weird stuff like that you got to start wondering who's going to call who's going to call it out first, right? Is it going to be the players or is it going to be somebody else? Because Mike Florio is saying it, he can't be the only one.
Yeah, and it's not like there was like a giant red flag or anything like that. It was just like the exact quote was, they got scared off by the preliminary medical research. It was too much of an investment for a player at his age.
Yeah,
now we're walking down a line here. We're getting into something I don't know if we want to get into.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of horse manure, and my perspective is that I think that the Players Association is probably going to start asking questions about why there are two players who don't have any real red flags.
Yep.
We're talking about a spinal cord injury here.
No, it's not like something major. Like remember a few years ago, John Dornbos. I mean, it saved his life. Those medical, it literally saved his life when he got traded to the Saints. Right. But like this is ticky-tacky stuff for teams. So very different scenarios. All right, before I get out of here, final nugget.
Yeah.
An old friend of the Philadelphia Eagles, a giant killer, you may say, is retiring. Boston Scott has called it a career. He will be retiring from the National Football League. I'll tell you what, Josh, watching Boston Scott some of those years destroy the Giants was absolutely fantastic. What a fun player. I mean, backup player, role player on your team, beating up on the Giants is like every year. Oh, anytime touchdown, I'm putting against the New York Football Giants. All right. And we know Boston Scott's going to have a day today. Shout out to Boston Scott. An awesome career, man.
Hey, man, undersized guy, a guy who was not highly recruited out of high school, not highly drafted out of college. But you know what? He carved out a nice little role for himself. He did good for himself. So he did. And you know what? It was always fun that a guy named Boston played for Philadelphia. That was always funny to me.
You know, every time he'd break one off against the Giants, I would scream or send the GIF saying, "Great Scott, there he goes again." Missed opportunity for announcers there. So there you go. Boston Scott.
Yeah.
Retiring from the National Football League. An Eagles legend, Josh.
Hey, listen, man, you have 7 rushing touchdowns in a season. You did something right with your career, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely did. All right, little 3-pack. We got it all in today. And a breaking news nugget. Talk about it, Josh. Let's go.
Nick, always appreciate you jumping on. We will not be on tomorrow and Friday, but you'll be back with the Schweimer Saturday in the locker room, 10 a.m. to noon here on 97.3 ESPN.
As they say, nothing could be finer. I'll talk to you.
Good luck with that. Nick Earnshaw joined us here on the Sports Bash, early edition of the Nuggets here on 97.3 ESPN. You know, we talked a lot of baseball early in that conversation. Speaking of the Phillies, yeah, that sounder, there it is. Come on. You want to go to the Phillies game in Baltimore this year? You want to qualify for this contest? I got you. 609-573-3776. You call, you get through on the phone line, and you are in as a qualifier for the Phillies trip giveaway contest. And if you qualify, you must be present next Thursday, Phillies opening day. Anchorage, Summers Point. Join Mike Gill in the Sports Bash. Come on down, hang out with everybody, watch the Phillies game, and your opportunity to win a trip to the Phillies in Baltimore. But first, you got to qualify. 609-573-3776. Coming up the other side, Geoff Mosher will get his thoughts on Andy Dalton, the Eagles' new backup QB. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Congratulations to our latest qualifiers for the Phillies trip giveaway. Paul and EHT, Kevin in Northfield, you are on the list. And you, as a qualifier, have a chance to win a Phillies trip to Baltimore, but you must be present next Thursday at the Anchorage in Summers Point. More opportunities for you to qualify later this hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, it is time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts Madness Zone. Yes, March 19th to 22nd. Catch every college basketball game and place your bets at Atlantic City's best sportsbook while you watch, eat, and drink all tournament long. Or you can turn it into a getaway. Yes, March Madness, the Zone. Yes, there's a hotel package, an overnight stay, plus $50 of food and beverage credit. So you can either just come out for a day at Ocean Casino, or you could turn it into a weekend getaway inside the Madness Zone. Book now at theoceanac.com. We'll be talking with Geoff Mosher in just a bit here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I guess it's breaking news, but I don't know if it's real breaking news because so Andy Dalton is now the Eagles, well, at least he's expected to be the Eagles' new backup quarterback. So remember, Sam Howell is no longer with the Eagles. Before last season, they traded away Kenny Pickett. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson ended up just being a camp arm. So they were basically down to just Tanner McKee and Jalen Hurts. And the Eagles have decided that tandem of Hurts and McKee, they needed a more of a sure thing in that quarterback room. So they acquire Andy Dalton. Now, the Andy Dalton thing is interesting because we looked it up a little bit earlier here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. There was no obvious connection between, at least I could find so far, between Andy Dalton and Sean Mannion. The only connection I've been able to find is that the Eagles quarterbacks coach worked with Andy Dalton for 1 year in Carolina. Outside of that, outside of Park Frazier, I can't find a single person in Andy Dalton's 16-year NFL career who he has a connection to in Philadelphia. So I don't know if the quarterback coach is enough or the Eagles are just looking at Andy Dalton and said, we need some real experience at the backup quarterback position. I think that's what it's more about than anything else. I think that the Eagles, they like having veterans. They like having experience at that position. So I think that's what it's going to get down to for this situation. As I said, we'll talk with Geoff Mosher in just a bit here on the Sports Bash about it on 97.3 ESPN. And the other side of the question is this. Excuse me. The other side of the question is this. Tanner McKee. Is it such a weak quarterback class that you're going to be able to convince or manipulate or whatever somebody to be willing to maybe trade a draft pick they don't want to, but they feel they have to in order to get the quarterback they want? Because again, once you get past a couple of names on that list, you know, we know that Mendoza's going number 1 overall, right? Ty Simpson is probably going to be a first-round pick because teams overdraft guys all the time. I know that there are some people, now I don't agree with it, but I know some people really, really have a high grade on a Garrett Nussmeier. I know Drew Aller's a guy that before the injury was considered a prospect. I'm not a big fan of Carson Beck, but I can see a team trying to draft him. if there's a team that says I didn't get who I want or I don't like these other guys, I'm going to trade for Tanner McKee. And I think that's where Dalton is as well. Dalton is an insurance policy. So you can trade Tanner McKee. Again, I don't think the Eagles are trying to trade Tanner McKee, but I think like A.J. Brown, enough teams have called about the potential of it. Now, I go back to this. I mentioned with Nick Earnshaw earlier in the show. Tanner McKee looked a lot better when his coordinator was Kellen Moore versus last year of Patullo. And the fact that Kellen Moore has not traded for Tanner McKee does make me a little curious. And that's where we bring in Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Philly voice, covers the Eagles, joining us here on 97.3 as Geoff, I never thought I would be saying breaking news, Eagles acquire Andy Dalton, but yet here we are. Andy Dalton is prospectively the Eagles' new backup quarterback, and the only guy, Geoff, I can find that's any connective tissue in his 16-year career is Parks Frazier. I can't find anyone else that Dalton has a connection to when it comes to this coaching staff.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so quick to call him the backup quarterback. I mean, Tanner McKee is still the backup quarterback until otherwise, but I do think it's an interesting acquisition, Josh, to your point, in that this is a guy who started 169 games. He's a pretty good guy to have as a backup quarterback. I mean, they put him in when Bryce Young was struggling a couple of years ago because they felt more confident in him being able to win games. Now, it could be a signal that they feel like they've got something on the trade market for Tanner McKee, and they want to have a good veteran backup who's cost efficient, and certainly at his number, he will be cost efficient. It's a $4 million contract. I believe $2 million is guaranteed, and that's where it's interesting because $2 million guaranteed is a little bit too much to eat along with the pick if you don't plan to have him on the team. Like if you keep McKee and you draft a quarterback, what do you do then with Dalton? So it makes me think that there's something going on there in the works.
Well, what about the other side of the coin, Geoff, which is there's a lot of guys who are free agents who are quarterbacks, and for whatever reason, and I'm not saying the Eagles should sign any of these guys, but the Eagles said, hey, we are going to go out and get Andy Dalton instead of signing Tyrod Taylor, Cooper Rush, Jimmy G, Brandon Allen. Like, there are guys out there that you could have brought in for a quote-unquote camp arm. But no, like you said, you are investing something into this Andy Dalton instead of just bringing in one of those random guys.
Yeah, I think the most, ironic thing of all is that they had Sam Howell, right? They hired Sean Mannion as the OC. Howell was in Minnesota last year before he came to the Eagles, so he was knowledgeable of Kevin O'Connell's offense. They must not have loved him because they obviously got rid of him for Carson Wentz. But to your point, usually you're looking for backups, guys who come in who will know the offense. But Sam Howell is now, of course, with the Cowboys. And you're right, there's not a whole lot of connection here between Dalton and the staff. They could have signed, but they clearly, Howie is not afraid if he likes a guy and thinks he's good enough to give up a draft pick for him as opposed to going the free agent route.
Get to the Tanner McKee part of the conversation, Geoff. Obviously, this is not a great quarterback draft class. There's a lot of people who have they don't have a lot of high grades on these quarterbacks. This is kind of like the draft class with Kenny Pickett years ago, where people are going to get overdrafted. So are the Eagles maybe banking on the idea that someone's not going to get who they want and that Tanner McKee might be someone's backup option?
I'm sure that's the case. And, Justin Fields got traded yesterday. So it's a little interesting that this trade today for Andy Dalton goes down because, Fields going to the Chiefs is one less quarterback on the market. Now, I don't know if anybody wanted him as their starter, but now he's the backup for the Chiefs. And where are you going if you're looking for A, either a starter, or B, someone like Fields who can compete with your starter or push your guy in-house to be the starter? And that's what you would want Tanner McKee to be, if not definitely your starter.
with that being said, you mentioned the fact that the Eagles could still draft a quarterback. So, look, we're not talking about first-round draft pick. We're obviously not saying that. But,
Correct.
where would just to use an example, a day 3 pick, right? A guy they draft, where do you think that would fit in to the conversation? Because they have drafted quarterbacks in the past, like Kyle McCord, and they didn't make the team.
Yep.
So is it just a matter of, as you just said earlier, Howie and the Eagles maybe just like somebody enough to want to bring him in to get a better look at him?
Well, the organization we know really wants to have as many young developmental quarterbacks as possible, and not just to have them. They really want to be able to see it through. Sometimes they miss, and of course, Kyle McCord is one of those situations. Sometimes they hit, and Tanner McKee for them they would consider a hit, especially because they feel like he was good enough to be their backup last year, and that's an important spot for the Eagles. And he's already they've gotten interest in him already. So I would not put anything, second round or later past the Eagles, day 2 or day 3, because they really don't have a young developmental quarterback, especially if they trade Tanner McKee. And even if they don't, this is Tanner McKee's last year of his deal, and it would be tough to retain him after this year. You're not going to give him an extension to be a backup. That just doesn't happen. So I think that they shocked us all in 2020 when they took Jalen Hurts in round 2. And all these years later, I think that means we can't really put anything past them. Remember, Jalen Hurts, despite what 1,000 people want to say, was not drafted to take Carson Wentz's spot. They had no clue that things were going to unfold the way they did. He was drafted because they really wanted a young, cost-efficient backup that they believed in, and they admitted that they reached for him in round 2 because of the Russell Wilson situation that had burned them several years earlier. So that's why I'm not sitting here saying, I'm not trying to some people think you're stirring the pot if you say the Eagles could take a quarterback in round 2 or 3. BS. That's not stirring anything. It's just their operating procedure now. And again, it would only mean that they're looking for a young developmental quarterback.
Geoff Mosher joining us for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Also writes for Philly Voice, joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sticking with the offensive side of the ball, Geoff, we didn't get your thoughts yet on yesterday's news. I know you guys talked about it on the pod this morning, but Hollywood Brown is now in the wide receiver room for the Eagles. And I find it interesting because, this is a receiver who wanted out of Baltimore because he wanted more targets. And now he's coming to a team where you have a coordinator who is coming from an offense that spread the ball around. So is this a good fit for Hollywood Brown with the Eagles?
Well, yeah, it's a good fit. You're right. He definitely falls into the category of the be careful what you ask for treatment, because you want out? Okay, we'll send you over to Arizona, which doesn't have Lamar Jackson anymore and shaky passing game. And then, we wound up getting hurt a lot. I think he's a talented player who has not yet fulfilled the type of talent that he came into the league with, which is blistering speed, the ability to make yards after catch because of that speed. And it just hasn't manifested for him because of injuries. Me and Adam talked about this on the podcast this morning. It's probably not like the best ball tracker downfield for a guy who has blistering speed. We're a little spoiled here because guys like Deshaun Jackson, who are just elite ball trackers, and so is A.J. Brown, right? And Devontae Smith, all in different ways. But that's yet to be something that Hollywood has really excelled at. But he still has great speed. He can still make plays. I think if he's healthy, this signing was not to replace A.J. Brown because they're not nearly the same kind of player. And after A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, with Jahan Dotson gone, Josh, the list of receivers the Eagles had are this: Britton Covey, Johnny Wilson, Darius Cooper, and I'm probably missing somebody else there, but you get the point, right? It's a list of people who are not ready to be a number 2 or a number 3 receiver in the NFL. I am curious, I'm sure we all are, right, about Darius Cooper's capacity. We'll have to see, and if he can really improve, that's great, but they had zero depth. So whether you have A.J. Brown or not, you had no depth. So now you have some. And then if you do move A.J. Brown, well, you've got Devontae Smith and you've got Marquise Brown, but then you still have some work to do there.
Now, Brown did have 5 touchdown catches last year for the Chiefs. Is there anything you think can be gleaned from what he did in Kansas City last year, or do you think that the Chiefs' offense is too different than what Mannion's going to bring to Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because the Chiefs' offense was so wonky last year, and then obviously Mahomes got hurt at the end of the year. I thought he had a decent year, Hollywood Brown, and he was himself still coming off those injuries, right? So you'd like to think this offseason he's been fully healthy. He'll get into the camp, he'll learn the offense, and give himself a chance to really show what he can do.
Couple more for Geoff Mosher here on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Sticking the offensive side of the ball, Geoff, what is your perspective on now that we're kind of getting into that next stage of the offseason, right? You know, the first flurry of like crazy big names have come off the board, right? And now we're kind of getting into the season of, you know, hey, we're going to go to Marshall's discount rack and see what we can get for a good value Howie season, right? You know, what do you think the next chess move is going to be in terms of fortifying this roster? Because they do have a lot of needs on both offense and defense still to be fulfilled.
Oh, yeah. I can't – that May 1st deadline or April 28th, whatever it is, where all your signings no longer count against the comp pick formula are going to be a fascinating time for the Eagles. You know, that's when Howie has done some of his best work. You're talking about Mekhi Becton, right? You're talking about LeGarrette Blount. You're talking about, he traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson a week before the season starts. We talked about that last week. So I never really get into we need to caution the public mode after the first 2 weeks of free agency when he's not active. I mean, you look at their edge rusher spot. You're asking me what they had 20 some odd million to give to Jalen Phillips that they couldn't because he took a different offer. They have to get an edge rusher and a good one, like someone who's worth spending a lot of money on that they were going to give to Phillips. And they're going to have to be creative because that's not somebody that's on the market right now. So not on the free agent market. Could be the trade market. Could have to be the draft. Safety, Josh. I mean, right now, how do you line up and play a game? That's with safety. Now, you don't have to, but that's my point is you've got Andrew Makuba and you don't have Reed Blankenship, and your number 3 safety was Marcus Epps. He's a free agent, might not be back. And your number 4 safety, you've already decided is not going to play for you, and that's Sidney Brown. So you kind of need 3 safeties in here that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, the safety thing is going to be absolutely fascinating. And I will say this, and I know it's very hard to read into things, so I'm not asking you or anybody to do that, but at least for me, I did find it interesting that, you know, on the Exciting Mike's pod, that Reed Blankenship never said yes or no that the Eagles offered him anything. So, you know, it could be very possible the Eagles have always been trying to look for the next safety, not just because Blankenship signed with Houston. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what we understand, you know, Adam and I have talked about this on the pod, there were definitely conversations. You know, it's hard to say whether conversations led to a concrete offer or whether conversations made it understood that. So Howie has this way sometimes of saying a guy will be an Eagle if he wants to be an Eagle, which is his way of saying if he wants to take a below market deal, you know. So it's hard to say if exact numbers were exchanged or if the message was like, if you think you're going to do better than this on the free agent market, then you're welcome to go test that free agent market. And if you get it, go grab it. If not, come back to us and we'll talk. You know, that's oftentimes how it goes with guys like that.
A couple more things before we let you go, Geoff. Boston Scott retired.
Giants are very happy, I'm sure.
It is pretty impressive that when you go back and look at his career, that you realize that he probably was one of the biggest overachievers to ever play in an Eagles uniform, right? I mean, you talk about a guy who was probably, first of all, he wasn't just overlooked coming out of high school. He was overlooked coming out of college at, Louisiana Tech. And if I remember correctly, one of the years he had 7 rushing touchdowns with the Eagles.
Yes, I think 5 of them were against the Giants. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, exactly.
The one thing I can think about with Boston Scott is I don't remember him ever getting into the game and not playing well or really screwing up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he overachieved. I mean, he was a barely 5'9" running back, compactly built, so he was strong. He could break tackles, but he had a little bit of wiggle. He could catch the ball, right? But guys like that are a dime a dozen, and he still managed to have some successful years. And did he go to a Super Bowl with the Eagles? Was he on the team in 02?
He was on the 22 team.
Yeah, so he went to a Super Bowl. His Instagram message was interesting because he, talked about all the inner conflict of being, happy about his career, but incomplete and angry and never really getting the chance, but also realizing you can work so hard for something and not get that chance. And he's right. That's an NFL player story to a T, especially an undrafted guy. I mean, I don't know if he could worked any harder or done anything differently to put himself in the position to succeed. But at the end of the day, when you are a dime a dozen because of either your lack of measurables or how you're built or what your talent level is, it's still a great story for him to have made it as far as he did.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, Boston Scott's initial rise to fame was during the 2019 season when half the team got injured. Yeah. And it was, Boston Scott and Josh Perkins and Deontay Burnett who were all running around on offense with Carson Wentz. And it's still perplexing that Wentz threw for 4,000 passing yards that year. But
was that the year that the Notre Dame running back who was what's his name? The tall Josh
Adams.
Josh Adams, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Wow.
Boston Scott more playing time than he did.
That's amazing. Crazy. Crazy times.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of crazy times, are you recovered from last night's WBC final?
I am recovered. I really enjoyed the WBC. We have to argue with Gill here when he gets back. I mean, he's such a downer about the WBC because it's not every team's best player. It was still good baseball. At the end of the day, it was clean, fundamentally sound, passionate baseball. And yes, there are some flaws in that. A guy like, Mason Miller couldn't pitch or Tariq Skubal couldn't pitch for USA for other reasons and things like that. And Venezuela, that's the crazy thing about Venezuela, Josh, is that there are probably 6 or 7 guys, right, who are way better than who they were putting out there that just weren't playing for them because they're in camp with other teams, right? And but I still enjoyed the Harper home run was great. I enjoyed the tournament, and they can work some things out, but I think it was great. In my career, Josh, I started off as a minor league baseball reporter, independent league. You remember when the Atlantic City Surf were playing at the Sandcastle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I covered the Somerset Patriots, and they played a lot of those teams. And I was very fortunate to get to know a lot of Venezuelan ball players in the Atlantic League. And I did a story about what it was like being a Venezuelan ball player in America. I'm sorry if I'm being long-winded. I'll be short here. But
this is cool.
Getting to know them, what I really got to understand was they had – and remember, this is more in the early 2000s before. I feel like there are a lot better Venezuelan players in the league now than maybe back, or at least more. There's more good Venezuelan players. Right. Back then it was still like Bobby Abreu, you're not as many superstars like there are now, like a Jackson Chorrillo, right? But they were so passionate about baseball, and they were so passionate about Venezuelan baseball, being recognized among the Caribbean teams as really being up there. And they were also very, very distraught. And again, this goes back about 15, 20 years about what it was like to have to go back home with their government, the way it was, their leadership. It was very tough. If you were any kind of ball player making some money, your safety and security was a threat back in Venezuela.
Right.
So I don't know how much of that has changed. Obviously, there's a lot been going on geopolitically there that I'm not going to get into, but I just know that this is a great moment for that. As sucks as it is for us as Americans to lose, I'm kind of happy for the Venezuelan baseball community because I know how much it means to them.
Well, that's why, for example, that interview that Eugenio Suarez did with Ken Rosenthal, which is so heartwarming because like the dude's like he's thanking God, he's thanking his family, he's thanking his teammates. He almost I thought he was gonna hug Ken Rosenthal. Like he was just so happy, like the pure joy just pouring out of him.
Yes.
It was just such a wonderful thing. And by the way, with Venezuela, it's actually because of the geopolitical stuff they were an underdog because there were a lot of guys who, for those who don't know, their visas wouldn't let them play in the WBC because their visas were stamped to only play for their ball teams. Like Jose Alvarado wasn't allowed to play in WBC because if he would have tried to, he would have been deported.
Yeah. Yep. That is probably true. I think Peralta from the Mets, right? I think
Peralta's another one. Yep.
I mean, there are some really good Venezuelan ball players.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, the Venezuelan government had these crazy restrictions on who was allowed to even leave the country if you were an athlete. Like it was very like
old Cuba almost, you know?
Yes. Yeah, very creepy kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, really just sucks to lose again in the championship game, but very, very happy for Venezuela. It's the people I've met from Venezuela have been amazing people.
Before I let you go, I did my homework. I got my sheet here for you.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. What you got?
See, you forgot, but I remembered.
I'm glad.
So, out of the Midwest, I got Iowa State.
Okay, you and I are lockstep with that. I really like Iowa State.
Out of the West, I got Arizona.
Yeah, I'm not as confident with them, Josh. I know you don't base a team based on what they've done like 5, 6, 7 years ago, but this coach is not one of the blue blood coaches. He's a little bit not new to Arizona, but I mean he's not like Lute Olson or Dad Storm Miller. So I wouldn't be surprised if Villanova could upset them. Maybe I'm being a homer. I don't know.
Yeah, you're being a little bit of a homer there. I don't even know if Villanova gets out of their first round matchup.
Against Utah State?
Yeah, because Utah State's their head coach is a former Villanova player.
It is correct. By the way, did you know Long Island's playing and their head coach is Rod Strickland? Do you know how cool that is?
That's wild.
Awesome. Yeah. And how about Hofstra, Jay Wright's first stomping ground as a 13th seed back in the tournament for the first time since I think 2001, his last year there. That was pretty cool too. But yeah, I think Villanova can get past Utah State, and I'm hoping there. I think that'll be a good matchup with Zona. But go ahead.
So by the way, by one of my picks, I'll give it to you now. I got Hofstra covering the spread against Alabama.
Nice. Well, Alabama is without their best player, right? And leading scorer.
Yeah.
He got arrested and kicked off the team.
He got arrested, kicked off the team. And I by the way, this is such an NFL news headline, Geoff. Did you see the reason why he got arrested?
I thought I saw drugs or something. Like I didn't read the whole story.
It's not just drugs. So I will never forget it because they were talking about it the other night on ESPN radio because they were laughing about it. So literally the indictment is possession of marijuana without intent for personal use.
So meaning dealing.
Right. But instead of saying dealing, like they had to delineate that he wasn't using it for personal use.
Oh my God, that is funny.
So it's such like a sports headline, you know?
Yeah. Hey, keep an eye on High Point in the 12-5 game against Wisconsin. They won 30 games this year. They average 90 points a game. They don't play any defense, but in the tournament, that's the type of team that gets hot from the arc and just starts, making some magic happen.
So I actually have High Point beating Wisconsin in my bracket because here's the thing. Did you know that High Point has the largest NIL budget of any non-power conference team in the tournament?
What is that? $80?
No, it's millions and millions of dollars.
That's amazing. They must have a very good donor then.
They have a very good group of donors. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Somebody who went to High Point and who a lot of people don't even realize is in North Carolina is very wealthy. So that's good. Good. I like that.
So my other two regions. So coming out of the South, I got Houston.
Good pick. Good pick. I can definitely see that. That was who's the one seed in that? Is that not
Florida?
Michigan? Florida, Houston. I think I had Houston too, Josh. Now that I think about it, but go ahead.
I think Florida's just not as good as they were last year. I think that's what it comes down to.
We'll see. I mean, they're pretty good. They've been wonky. I mean, they've had some great wins. They've had some surprising losses, but yeah.
And then finally, out of the East is probably my biggest quote unquote surprise would be I got St. John's coming out of the East.
So you need to be drug tested immediately. Have you been hanging out with that guy who just got kicked off the team from Alabama?
So here's my theory. So Duke has 2 injuries, not 1 but 2. So I think that's going to limit them for the long run. I can't trust UConn. I just feel like UConn, you know what I mean? Like I feel like they're going to get. Yeah, they're gonna get there. They'll get to the Sweet 16, and to me, as long as St. John's can get out of the first round, I feel like they got a run here because the team. I feel like that first round matchup is gonna tell us everything we need to know because Northern Iowa. Everything I have seen is that they are like the slowest pace of play in all of college basketball. Like that game is like an underplay. Like take Northern Iowa, St. John under, because that's probably going to be like a 60-58 kind of game.
Yeah, I agree. What I can't see about St. John's is the fact that they just don't have enough from the perimeter. Kansas is in there. I know Kansas has had issues with their best player, Peterson, all year. But I think I think the way Kansas plays and their ability to move the ball and hit shots will be very difficult for St. John's because St. John's is a front-running team. They have to pounce on you early and bully you like they did to UConn to beat you. They cannot play from behind in the tournament. They just don't hit enough from the perimeter. I love what Pitino's done there. They're fantastic to watch. I have all the respect in the world, but you saw it happen last year when they get Calipari's Arkansas team, right? That they just they don't, to me, have enough. You got to have perimeter play to win the NCAA tournament. I cannot see. You can sell me on them maybe getting to the Sweet 16, but they cannot hit enough outside shots to come out of that bracket.
So then who do you like? You like Michigan State? You like UConn? Who do you like there?
I mean, if I like Duke, but to be honest with you, unfortunately, I like Duke in that bracket, but it does strike me that there's a ton of blue bloods. I mean, you got UConn, you got UCLA, you have great programs like Michigan State, Ohio State. You have a ton of NCAA appearances here in this bracket alone and
Geoff,
a couple of Final Fours.
I am praying to God that we get UCLA versus UConn in the second round, just so we can watch the animation of Mick Cronin and Dan Hurley both losing their minds for 48 minutes.
Well, guess what? You could see that live and in person, which I will be doing if that'll be at Xfinity Mobile Arena, correct?
Yes, I think that game would be a
second round game, right?
Yes, but I think that would be Sunday. I think that would be the Sunday game.
Oh, is it? No.
Or is it Saturday?
I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I thought it would be the so UConn and Furman are playing on number 15. Damn it, I don't have it in front of me. Oh well, I'm sorry.
I'm trying. See now you got me bugging. So now I'm trying to pull it up here. This is what happens when you go down to college basketball.
Those games aren't in Philly? I thought they were in Philly for some reason.
So Virginia Wright State, that's in Philly.
Correct.
Tennessee versus TBD.
Miami. Or Tennessee versus probably Miami of Ohio, right?
Probably, yeah. UCLA versus UCF.
That's in Philly, right?
Yeah, and then, UConn Furman. Yep.
Yeah, so second round game. That would be UConn, UCLA in Philly, I would think, right?
Right, but that would be Sunday.
Okay. I'll still see it.
If I'm reading this schedule, if the schedule right is in front of me, that would be either Sunday at 2:30 or 6:30 as of right now.
Correct. In Philly at Xfinity Mobile Arena.
Correct.
So we could all see it up front. And yes, if you're sitting anywhere near the court, you could hear Hurley and Cronin and all of the expletives that they'll be spewing at the refs, at each other, at their team. It'll be great.
At themselves.
At themselves, yeah.
Remember Hurley got thrown out for the one game, and they asked him about what he say to the refs. I wasn't even talking to him. I was talking to myself.
Yes, I remember that. Which was the biggest lie.
It totally was. But it's just like the way he delivered it at the press conference. It's like you were like, wait, is he telling the truth? Like,
yeah. Hey, listen, you have some great coaches here. I mean, in Philly, right? I mean, you've got Hurley, you've got Cronin, you got Rick Barnes. Guys won like 850 games. The Tennessee coach.
Craziness.
He's really good. So, some really good stuff. Should be fun.
By the way, shameless plug, I'll be interviewing Fran Dunphy this Saturday on my show, Hanging with Hennig. So
awesome. I'll be tuning in.
Geoff Mosher at Geoff P. Mosher, because P obviously stands for Philadelphia. I'm just kidding, it doesn't. Joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Geoff, you can go back to your regularly scheduled programming, okay?
All right, have a good one. Take care.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. See how we're late to break, but Geoff was late coming on and we were having too much fun. We'll check back in on the White Horse RV text board next, 609-403-0973. That is the text board. Josh Hennig hanging out with you, filling in for Mike Gill on a Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zero. Warmer days are ahead, although tomorrow will stay on the cool side. For tonight, a freeze is likely again, low at 28 degrees with a few clouds overhead. Partly sunny tomorrow and slightly warmer, high of 48 with a chance of an evening shower. 55 on Friday, making for a mild first day of spring, mostly sunny, although scattered rain arrives late. We should see some 60s as we go through this weekend. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
We have the perfect solution for sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Another opportunity for you to qualify for the Phillies trip giveaway coming up. I'm going to say in about 10 minutes from now, roughly. You know, Mike Gill always criticizes me for being too literal. I do actually try to be, not be too crazy with this stuff. But, old habits are hard to break. So if I just say about with everything, people seem to leave me alone with that. Frankly, Mike Gill is the only person who's ever criticized me for any of this stuff. So either Mike Gill is the only person willing to be honest with me about it, or nobody else actually cares. Read into that what you will. Text board is open at 609-403-0973. The White Horse RV text board, 609-403-0973. Some texts been coming in since we talked last to the text boarders. Thanks to everybody who chimed in. BC from Bowers Beach says, regarding Andy Dalton, if a team makes a good offer for Tanner McKee, I think the Eagles will not hesitate to make that trade. Yeah, I agree with you, BC. My take on the Andy Dalton trade is this is basically allows the Eagles to trade Tanner McKee for a draft pick, draft the guy in like the second or third day of the draft, and then go in the training camp with maybe one other camp arm, like a Brandon Allen on a veteran minimum, and then you basically go forward making sure that whoever the backup is someone who we know is a bona fide experience at the job. Stephen Bender says, I think Tanner McKee gets traded to the Rams. I don't think it's a crazy idea. I think you have to ask the question, does Tanner McKee really fit what Sean McVay wants to do long term? Tanner McKee might be glass case of emergency now. This year, the Rams had guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and others in camp. So, does Tanner McKee fit that mold? I think it's a very good question to ask. To me, as I said before, I'm surprised that Kellen Moore hasn't tried the trade. Or maybe he has tried the trade and got the straight no. But Kellen Moore, to me, would be the guy that makes sense. He's already worked with Tanner McKee. I feel like if he doesn't go with the Saints, I don't know. Does Shane Steichen call and try to trade for him and get a backup quarterback? I don't know. Texas didn't leave their name. It says Speedy Claxton is the Hofstra coach. That is correct. Speedy Claxton is the Hofstra coach, which is pretty cool and exciting. Yes, so Speedy Claxton is a Hofstra. Rod Strickland is at Long Beach Island, and I forget who the other former players in the tournament who's coaching as well. It's some pretty cool names out there. Geoff Noche said he's really angry about my St. John's shoes. He says St. John's can't shoot. No Final Four for them. He says Geoff agree. He says by the way, Geoff also says yes, you're correct. UCLA and UConn will play Sunday in Philadelphia. And then he sends me a couple of what the times would be. So if I'm looking at the times you're sending me correctly, Geoff, I would say based on the schedule that I have, I would assume that UCLA UConn will be 5:15 or 8:40. Hopefully it's not 8:40 for all the East Coast people, because people might have to go to work the next day. 609-403-0973 on the White Horse RV text board. All right, we got more text to get to in the next hour. So to come, I see Jeff from Port Norris. Appreciate you chiming in. We got some other texts that have come in throughout the show for Big Al and Vineland. So I appreciate everybody chiming into the conversation. But still to come, we got Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 973ESPN.com. He will join us to talk about the Flyers back in action tonight. Of course, you can hear that game 10 o'clock right here on 973 ESPN tonight. We will start with the, what's the name of it? First four. Man, you can tell I've been doing this all week by myself again. I'm starting to not remember what day it is, what time it is. But yes, so tonight, first four begins at 6:30 here on 973 ESPN. We'll go with the Flyers game at 10 o'clock, the Flyers versus the Ducks. Also still to come in the show, we will get more into the NCAA tournament with Chris Vannini from The Athletic. He will join us at 5:25. All that and more still to come. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on the Sports Bash. Filling in for Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. CL streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget your next opportunity to qualify for the Phillies trip giveaway. That sounder is coming up in just a few minutes.
Get ready for the madness. March Madness on 97.3 ESPN.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the third time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu, an Elite CompTIA certification partner. Financial aid is available to those who qualify, including VA benefits.
Progressive knows that for business owners, vacations hit different. But hey, at least you finally took a vacation. And look at that. You only answered 53 calls, 84 emails, onboarded 1 new hire, and covered for Chris while he's out on paternity leave, and you did it all from a kayak. Because you, my friend, know how to relax. All right, you may not know how to take a day off, but you do know both your personal and business auto insurance needs can be covered in one place with Progressive. So at least that's relaxing, right? Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states or situations.
There's a sounder. You know what that means? Time for you to get on your phone. 609-573-3776 is the call-in line. If you want to qualify for the Phillies trip, the Baltimore giveaway, you got to call 609-573-3776. And if you get through on the phone lines, you're qualified. And if you qualified, you must be present next Thursday at the Anchorage at Summer Point for Phillies Opening Day when Mike Gill and the Sports Bash are broadcasting live. So, here's the steps again. Call 609-573-3776. Qualify for the Philly trip to Baltimore giveaway and then be present at the Anchorage Summer Point next Thursday. And if you don't qualify this hour, you have another opportunity next hour here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill. 97.3 ESPN. Flyers talk with Kevin Durso next.
Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him. It's a sack.
Sixers.
Oh, baby.
And Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Congratulations to our latest qualifiers for the Phillies with the Baltimore contest. John in Brigantine, Linda in Ocean City, you join the list of qualifiers. We have one more opportunity to qualify later this hour. When you hear the sounder, get on the phone and you can qualify. And by the way, if I answer the phone, because for those who don't know, I am the one answering the phone for these contests, okay? If I say 97.3 ESPN, you're a qualifier, please hold. Please don't hang up, okay? I don't think it's too much for me to ask you to hold on for a minute or two so I can get you on as a qualifier. So please don't hang up if you're a qualifier. We want to get you in. If you got through on the phone, you call number 7, you're a qualifier. But if you hang up, you ruin the whole thing. And then you get somebody else who thinks that, they didn't get through or whatever. It's no fun. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to have a good time next Thursday at the Anchorage at Summers Point for Phillies Opening Day. All right, let's get it back to the ice here. The Flyers are back in action tonight. They take on the I feel like the unintended consequence of the Cutter-Gauthier rivalry, Cutter-Gauthier fiasco is that we have a unwanted rivalry with the Ducks now. And they play the Ducks tonight, 10 o'clock, here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. And Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, joins us. Kevin, on that point, did you ever think we come to a situation where, people are, circling the Ducks on their calendar because of Cutter-Gauthier? How crazy is that?
Yeah, I would have never seen that coming. Absolutely. It's not too often that a team that, it's funny because now the way the NHL schedule is, you see every team twice a year. It never used to be that way. So I can only imagine what it would have been like if there was this much vitriol for Cutter-Gauthier and he only came in once every 2 or 3 years like it used to be way back in the day. Now there's a date every year on the calendar that you are circling as Flyers fans that you can go and boo the hell out of Cutter-Gauthier, and all that type of stuff. And but I would have never picked a Western Conference team to have this kind of level of rivalry. That's for sure.
I mean, for those who might not be old enough, Kevin, it reminds me a lot of what happened with J.D. Drew back in the late 90s. Because for those who don't know, J.D. Drew was a top prospect. He wouldn't sign in Philadelphia. He ended up landing with the St. Louis Cardinals. And every time he came to Philadelphia, he got booed mercilessly at the vet. So it's kind of a similar vibe to me because, Drew was a good player. I mean, I think maybe Gauthier is probably going to be a better, overall athlete for his career than J.D. Drew was. But, it is a similar funny vibe to see, how much Philly fans hate this guy for saying, I don't want you.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a two-way street too, and to a degree, because there's the hatred of I don't like you because you said you didn't want to play for us, and there's people who from that moment on move on and don't care anymore, other than to remind them how much you don't like them when they come back to town. There's also people who do look at the numbers and would look at the state of the Flyers and say, it's a shame he didn't want to play here in hindsight because. And they kind of start to redirect some of the ire towards the front office, whatever happened there that led to this, because he is a talented player. He's having a great year, obviously. I feel like, when he got here this year in January, numbers were all right. He was having a better year than he was the year before, but it was still not quite, he wasn't near the top of the league in goals scored. Now he is. The first time he came to Philadelphia after the trade last season, he didn't have numbers close to this. So it was kind of like, well, we don't need you because look at what you're doing anyway. Now there's a bit of a shift in that thought process.
Yeah, that's true. So speaking of that thought process, so who are the Flyers right now, Kevin? Because I believe I see you laughing over there on the YouTube stream at 973 ESPN. But it is a question we have to ask, right? Because the Flyers, I believe they're 6-4 since they returned from the Olympic break, and it's not that they're a bad team. They're just not they're not a great team, and they're not on the same level as the teams that are contending for the playoffs. So when people talk about, who's still in the hunt, like no one mentions the Flyers in that conversation. So, who are the Flyers at this point? Because they have a winning record, but they're not a playoff team, right?
Exactly. And part of the problem with that is that once you get to this time of the season when you're trailing by as many points as they are, you're going to need help. And right now, you go back to Saturday when they played Columbus. That was a big game for them, obviously, because there's a 4-point swing that's involved in that situation, potentially. And they lose the game in a shootout. So it's 1 point going the other way. So you already take a step back. Everybody else on Saturday night seemed to win or at least get their game to overtime. So you gained no ground out of that day. And then you have 3 days off from game action. And I think that, as far as I could tell anyway, every single game that you wanted the result to go the other way, it went the wrong way. Every single one. So you end up further behind the 8 ball than you were to begin with. And that's part of the problem with this, is that you can't get to this stage of the season and be leaning on that much help from everybody else. There came a point, and I kind of put this out on Twitter X during the game on Saturday. There's about 6 minutes left. I think the final TV timeout happens. And I even said, don't expect a lot of risks being taken for the last 5.5 minutes of this game, because Columbus knows they need at least the point. That doesn't hurt them. Where they are, because they're ahead of the Flyers, they just need at least a point out of this game to feel comfortable with where they're going. The Flyers are the ones that really need the 2. And if anybody's going to take chances, I guess it should be them. But both teams play that way. Like, there's so many teams that are in that middle ground that have a shot at the playoffs, that when you get to this stage of the season and they play each other, there's almost kind of this mutual respect of, we're not going to do anything stupid and we're going to take the point to get to overtime, so that both sides benefit from it. This season in particular, maybe more than any, I've never been more of an advocate for changing the point structure and going to more of a reward regulation wins even more than they already do, or stop with the overtime loss point, because it really clouds the vision beyond where the Flyers, the Flyers, at least if you shuffled it any which way, they're not a playoff team, but there are playoff teams. Pittsburgh's in this category. Vegas is in this category. They have more losses than wins this season, but they're comfortably in the playoff picture because of how the points are structured. So it really doesn't kind of highlight who the best teams are sometimes, because you're still getting points for the losses.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I believe if I saw the stat correctly, the Flyers, only 20 of their 31 wins this year are in regulation. So they're a team that literally has benefited in the most literal sense from teams taking them to, typically go to overtime. Is that's the team that you look at and you're like, yeah, that team's got a good goaltender, right? They can survive. No offense to Vladar, he ain't one of the 5 best goaltenders in the NHL, but yet this team finds ways to win these games when it goes to extra time.
Yeah, Vladar's been very good this year. Don't get me, let's not get that wrong here, because his numbers overall have been pretty close to consistently in the top 10 for goalies in the league this year. And there's plenty of teams out there that wish they were close to that. I'm once again looking at you, Edmonton Oilers, that still don't have a goaltender, and who knows what happens as a result of that, because they're really kind of, it's weird. The Western Conference this year, and I guess it's a good time to bring this up because the Flyers are going to see a good dose of the Western Conference this week, obviously on the West Coast trip. It's been really poor this year. The Flyers would be a playoff team in the Western Conference this year. That's how poor it's been, and not by some small margin. I believe they'd be in by 3 points right now if that was the case. So it's really kind of it's kind of crazy to me to see some of the point totals from one side to the other. It just goes to show you how good the East is, and that's what the Flyers are always up against when you're competing in a conference that's that good or seems to be that good. There's teams on pace for close to 98 to 100 points that have to wonder if they're actually going to make it to the playoffs. That's how good the Eastern Conference has been. So you need to be in all of those games where you do get the points for going to overtime, like we're talking about. But at the same time, it does with the regulation win total. Regulation wins is one of the good ways of kind of defining who's been really good, because they get the job done way sooner, obviously. But there are teams that are in the playoffs that have taken advantage just as much of going to overtime or going to shootouts. Like, I think the Islanders, who are ahead of the Flyers, the Islanders are, I think, either 10-0 or 11-0 in 3-on-3 overtime, Like, it's not the same thing as winning games playing at 5-on-5 in regulation. You're using the system to your advantage by getting to that 3-on-3 overtime or to the shootout and using what you may have as a strength to your benefit.
By the way, to Kevin's point, the Seattle Kraken, who hold the final wild card spot in the West, they have 71 points. Flyers have 74. Just kind of give a context to what you were saying, Kevin. And by the way, the Kraken actually have allowed the same number of goals against as the Flyers.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I even look at, like, tonight they're playing Anaheim, obviously. Anaheim's got 77 points and leads their division. That's how poor the Pacific Division has been this season compared to, the Atlantic has been just insane this year in particular. The run that Buffalo is on to get back up to the top of that. Tampa's obviously still having a really good year. Montreal's in the mix. And then obviously you're running into a situation where it's very possible the two wildcard teams come from that division as well. That's how tight this race is.
Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider, joining us, 973ESPN.com for all of his Flyers coverage. Flyers versus Ducks tonight, 10 p.m. You hear the game on 973 ESPN FM on the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. If Seattle potential spam was just calling me, so I had to swipe them off my screen on my phone. Well, I don't have my phone on sound, right? Because
right.
It would be pretty dumb if I worked in a studio and had sound on my phone. But it still buzzes, it still buzzes, so I know if someone's calling me. And I look down, it was potential spam. It's like, thanks, no thanks.
Right.
Let's get back to the Flyers here because they're not spam. Because what I think is interesting is that since they returned from the break, Kevin, one of the storylines you mentioned about Vladar, what is the future for the Flyers with the goaltender? Because Vladar has performed above pretty much anyone's expectations this year. But again, I don't think we're going to put him in the category of, is he a good goaltender? Yes. Is he an all-time franchise-changing guy? No. But is he good enough if you got a better second goaltender than who you have, an Earnshaw, that it makes Vladar and whoever the other guy be a quality tandem? Is that what we're talking about here with Vladar, where it's like the offseason is going to be about, can we get a better number two?
Well, that's part of the equation. That I'll tell you that right off the bat. It definitely is part of the equation to get something better to put behind him for sure, or potentially who knows where that goes. I'll get into that in a second. But with Vladar in general, the thing with him is that this has all been great for him. He's played 41 games this season to this point, which is way above what his previous career high was. The numbers are still there. I believe Kevin Kerr, The Athletic, posted his last 10 games, just the individual stat lines from the last 10 games. And he's only got 2 where his save percentage was under 900. One of them was just an afternoon where the whole team didn't have it, but he didn't have it against the Rangers. And then you're talking about a game in Pittsburgh where they actually won the game in a shootout, but he gave up 3 goals on a limited number of shots is the only difference. That's really the only thing. And all of the other games, I'm sure there's more losses scattered in there than you think from those numbers, but he's given you a chance every single time. So that's encouraging to see that now you're getting into the dog days of the season as it gets down the stretch, and he's still holding up, even though he hasn't played this many games in the season before. The next step for that is replicating it the next season. And they do have him under contract next season to kind of see if that's something that you can move forward with. I kind of think that what they would want to do is try to bridge the gap between today and whenever they can get some of these 20-year-old prospect goalies, whenever their time comes. And it's a process. We're talking potentially 3-4 years before you see those guys. Can they get to that point with Vladar and somebody else, or even with Vladar still on the roster as the 1B to their eventual 1A situation? So that's, I think, the next step. And I think you determine, to me anyway, it's tough to say because I don't know what their timeline is going to be for it. They might think it's not too early to go ahead and give him an extension. I think I'd like to see him play into next season a little bit first and then decide that that's the right call. But I wouldn't blame them for looking at the body of work this season and rewarding him for it either. The thing about the goaltending position, though, is that recently, and this kind of all happened post-deadline, so it's nothing that was pre-trade deadline material, there's been some reports out there about goalies that the Flyers may have their eyes on in the offseason, goalies that may be on the outs with their current organization for some potential reason. And, Buffalo's an example. Buffalo's currently carrying technically 3 goalies, or has carried 3 goalies for a chunk of the year. Obviously, somebody's going to be looking for playing time. So there's a wonder, is Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen the guy who's going to be looking for more of a steady job at that point? Is Devin Levi their top prospect goalie looking for a place to go where he can actually get some starting time? Those are names that were floated out there. Toronto's Joseph Wall was floated out there. I kind of view Wall's an interesting one for me because I view him a lot more parallel to Ersson than others probably would. I don't think it would be an upgrade, but not a huge one. Like, to me, he's still behind Vladar. If you want to try to fast track the goalie position, I've also heard Jesper Wallstedt's name come up. He was just the goalie for Minnesota when the Flyers played Minnesota last week. And he's split starts for the most part, but Gustafson's really their guy in Minnesota. And he's a fairly recent first round pick. Goalies don't get taken in the first round very often. And kind of the thought process have been floated around that if you finish with a pick in the first round that's kind of in the middle, 14, 15 range, do you try to make a pick and see if you don't surprise people with you pick a guy in the middle of the first round and he turns out to be something great? Or do you potentially try to trade the pick and go after something that may be available and worth a first round pick, like a future goalie who's in his early 20s already at the NHL level and could be your number one for the next 10 years. Who knows? So those are the types of deals that Danny Briere is going to have to potentially think about when it comes to trying to turn the corner on this process when you don't have a lot of guys you can go out and sign with your cap space and you have other assets that you may be able to potentially use. So food for thought on the goaltending position there.
Kevin, before we let you go, again, we mentioned this is a 3-game West Coast road trip. Anaheim tonight, right back in action tomorrow night against the Kings. Oh, good thing I don't travel very far. I mean, it's like an hour drive from those two arenas. And then you got to travel up to San Jose on Saturday. What is a realistic expectation to look at? Maybe you're not looking literally at wins and losses on this road trip, but is there something outside of, we just talked about the goaltending, that maybe you want Flyer fans to keep an eye on with this road trip? Because I know for me, I'm very curious to see, for example, how they bounce back from Anaheim to Los Angeles, the 2 games back-to-back. Like, what is their energy level going to be like? I know for me, that's what I'm looking at, especially against a Kings team that is a borderline playoff team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, all three, especially if you're treating these games as they should, like playoff games, you're still theoretically in the race yourself. You're playing a team that's leading the division, but not by much, so those points matter for Anaheim. LA needs every point they can get to try to get back into the playoff picture, and San Jose is, you talked about where Seattle is in that wild card picture, San Jose is right there at 70 points. They are knocking on the door to try to get in, and so all 3 of these games matter greatly for the opposition, and they matter greatly for you if you still want to call yourself a playoff team. For me, if we're trying to put the wins and losses part aside from it, I was really just disappointed in the overall showing on Saturday that you weren't more kind of attacking mentality with the offensive part of the game. To have them total you did. I think they finished with 18 shots on goal in the game against Columbus. I just don't like that approach to a game where you need to try to get more traffic and more volume on net. I want to see that change. So I want to see that tonight in particular, I want to see their energy levels up. You bring up a great point with the back-to-back because they've already passed one of those tests this month, just last week, when they got a win against the Capitals on home ice and then went to Minnesota and got another win. That was a huge test to pass in terms of being able to be competitive in games like that. Minnesota is no slouch of a team, obviously. So that was a really good sign. So can you replicate it? And with this West Coast trip and things like that. So those are probably the 2 things for me is I definitely want to see a more active game than what they gave you on Saturday. You're in that game, you lose it 2-1 in a shootout that can go either way, but I just don't like the way that they went about it. Not enough shot volume, the power play not coming through once again, which has become the norm for the last 5 years plus at this point. You can't let those opportunities get away from you. And I don't there's probably no fix to the power play in the final 16 games of the season that's going to change things, but you can change a little bit by just being more of a shooter mentality. It's not like the coaching staff, we've heard it from them multiple times. It's not like they're being told don't shoot. It's something that happens when they go out there. They keep looking for the perfect play, and they really, by doing it, they slow everything down in front of them. It becomes really easy to kill penalties against them. So those are kind of the areas that I'm looking at going into this road trip.
Again, tonight, Anaheim hosts the Flyers. 10 p.m. is the coverage on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. You see for all of your Flyers coverage. Follow Kevin Durso at Kevin_Durso on the X platform. And, of course, all of his writing at 97.3 ESPN.com. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to get back to the court tonight. First four, 6:30 p.m. is the coverage on 97.3 ESPN. And on the other side, we will talk with Chris Vannini from The Athletic about all of the madness. We'll get his perspective on the teams, the brackets, the matchups, and more coming up next here on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. We are streaming live on YouTube at 973 ESPN.
Three-pointer on the way. Get ready for the madness. March Madness on 97.3 ESPN.
Winter storms can change the road in an instant. When the unexpected happens, you want the area's top-of-mind high-end collision specialist. Moppert Brothers in Northfield is trusted to restore luxury and performance vehicles to exact factory specifications. Manufacturer certified by Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Ford, Tesla, and Polestar, their team uses advanced equipment and precision craftsmanship to protect your investment. After the storm, choose the name drivers have trusted for decades. Moppert Brothers of Northfield.
I've always wanted to learn French, but the app I tried didn't help.
If you want to memorize words in another language, there's an app for that. But if you want to really learn another language, there's Babbel. Babbel was designed by over 200 language learning experts to be the most effective way to learn another language.
With other language learning apps, I was just playing games. I wasn't really learning. Babbel's different. Every time I open the app, I can choose to work on my writing, speaking, or listening. And it saves my mistakes for me to review, so I'm constantly improving. Babbel feels like it was created intentionally by people who really know what you need to learn another language. Before Babbel, I thought I just wasn't good with languages. But now I'm speaking French. Tout ça, c'est grâce à Babbel.
Want to really learn another language? Save up to 50% on your Babbel subscription when you sign up at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com to save up to 50%. Babbel.com.
Work. Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles agreeing to a one-year deal with wide receiver Hollywood Brown, who played the last 2 seasons with Kansas City. Last year, he had 49 receptions for the Chiefs, 587 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The deal is worth up to $6.5 million. NBA, the Sixers continuing their road trip Thursday as they take on Sacramento. Tuesday night, they fell to the Nuggets in Denver, 124-96. Philadelphia shot 39% from the floor. They went 9 9 for 41 from the three-point line. Quentin Grimes led the starters with 12 points. Their road trip will wrap up Saturday against the Utah Jazz. While the Flyers, they're in Anaheim tonight to take on the Ducks. Philadelphia has earned at least 1 point in 7 of their last 9 games. Anaheim, they lead the Pacific Division with 77 points. World Baseball Classic, the U.S. fell to Venezuela 3-2 on Tuesday night. Bryce Harper with a 2-run home run for the United States in the 8th inning that tied the game, but Eugenio Suarez broke that tie with an RBI double in the top of the 9th. The sports update brought to you by Progressive. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zero. Warmer days are ahead, although tomorrow will stay on the cool side. For tonight, a freeze is likely again, low at 28 degrees with a few clouds overhead. Partly sunny tomorrow and slightly warmer, high of 48 with a chance of an evening shower. 55 on Friday, making for a mild first day of spring, mostly sunny, although scattered rain arrives late. We should see some 60s as we go through this weekend. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
I mean, sometimes you just want an excuse to play a theme song, right? No, it actually got March Madness. Yes, it started last night, actually. Listen, if you were someone who missed the end of UMBC versus Howard, you missed a wild ending to a game. The madness is already underway. Of course, coverage begins tonight at 6:30 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN. Full day of coverage from noon to midnight tomorrow and Friday on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Joining us to get more into the tournament, what to look forward to over the next few days, Chris Vannini, a senior writer from The Athletic, joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, welcome in. How you doing today?
I am doing well. The first couple of days of the tournament, 2 of the best days in sports. Excited for it.
Absolutely. And I want to start with one of the storylines for tonight, Chris. And I know it's something that you and your colleagues at The Athletic have been watching very closely, is the whole situation with Miami of Ohio. There were some people who weren't even sure they would make the tournament after losing in their conference tournament. And now it's like, well, what happens if they do win tonight, right? Them playing in the first 4, I think, is one of the more fascinating storylines this week.
Yeah, I mean, this was going to be one of the most interesting teams in the tournament either way. I mean, they were 31-0 in the regular season. It probably would have been more fun to see them make it to the main field, but they lose that game to UMass. They end up in the first 4 where they're playing an SMU team that has been struggling a bit, but should have its best player, BJ Edwards, back tonight. And so I guess it's kind of it shouldn't really be a referendum on whether or not they deserved it. If they win, you'll have everybody say, see, they clearly deserved it. They should be in. They shouldn't have been in the first 4, this and that. They lose. You'll have a lot of people coming out to say, see, this is why they shouldn't be in it. It should be more power conference teams, yada, yada. So a lot of narrative is on the line tonight.
For you, looking ahead to Thursday, what is the storyline you're looking most forward to? Because I know for me, I feel like the next 2 days coming for Thursday and Friday, I think we're going to learn a lot about, if some of these teams might have been over or underseeded. I know that's a conversation that we have every year, but it feels like to me with some of these teams, Chris, that you can make an argument for several of them that they should be higher or lower.
You can. I mean, like Vanderbilt was one of them. Might be too low. St. John's might be too low. Those were teams that won their conference tournaments. Maybe Purdue is too high, a team that did win the Big Ten tournament. My biggest question going into this first weekend, and you may be asking me about it later, is are we going to have any Cinderellas? Because we didn't last year. There was one double-digit seed that made it to the second weekend, and that was Arkansas out of the SEC, a 10 seed. So it was a power conference team. We're not far removed from a couple of 16s beating ones. And, 6 years ago, it looked like we were having more upsets than ever. Now, suddenly, because of NIL in the portal, are we going to have fewer than ever? And almost everybody who's a top 4 seed is a power conference team. So what is going to happen? Are we going to have some 12s, some 11s, some mid-majors, not only maybe get a first-round upset, but maybe get a second one too, like an Akron or like a Miami of Ohio, a VCU, a Hofstra. I think those are teams I'll be looking for because I think it's good for the tournament. You got to have some of those teams. That's the madness part of March Madness. And if it's all chalk again in that first weekend, it's going to be a tough spot for the sport.
Well, I think one team that at least I'm looking at when it comes to the Cinderella category, Chris Vannini joining us here from The Athletic here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's talk about High Point. They got this massive NIL budget, and they're going into this tournament as a 12 seed, and I gotta admit, I've already picked them on all my brackets to advance to the next round, and then they got theoretically go against an Arkansas team, so it would be a very interesting matchup in and of itself. It's Calipari versus a team with a big NIL budget.
It could be. I mean, Wisconsin's a team might be better than people think. They had a couple of down years the last couple of years, and before that, they were pretty well known for getting upset in the tournament or not being able to finish the job, so to speak. But they've gotten back on track this year. That is another one, that we're looking for. And I think, again, you need a couple of teams like that to pop off, like St. Peter's a number of years ago. I mean, when St. Peter's went to the Elite Eight, that game against North Carolina was the most viewed Elite Eight game, even though it ended up being a blowout. Like fans do want that stuff. And so you need some teams like a High Point to potentially do that. And I don't know if High Point's NIL budget is on the same level as it may be a Wisconsin, but that is another very much team to keep an eye on. At the USF, South Florida, playing Louisville, an 11 seed is another one. They're a team that also has a lot of money. Their coach turned down the Syracuse job, it sounds like. He could go up there to Providence potentially as well. So that's another team that's got some money at the mid-major level looking to make a move.
Is Duke the most vulnerable of the 1 seeds?
I think so because, one, the injuries. Caleb Foster, the point guard, is out until probably the Final Four, maybe the season. The center is also banged up, unclear if he'll really be able to go. That could be down 2 starters in a region that is very difficult because they potentially could play Ohio State in the second weekend. Ohio State's come on very strong at the end of the season. You got Kansas or St. John's potentially in the Sweet 16. You've also got UConn and Michigan State in a red-hot UCLA team as well. That is by far the most difficult part of the bracket. You throw the injuries on top of it. I do think Duke is a team to be on, maybe upset alert, not the first game, but we'll have to work hard potentially to get to that second weekend.
One of those teams that they could be facing down the road is a team that, Chris, I'm getting a little bit ripped for here on 97.3 ESPN because I think St. John's can make a deep run, and I understand they don't have great outside shooting, but I just think that there's something about what Pitino has done with this team that he's probably gotten more out of this group of guys than most other coaches could. And to me, I think there's a chance that they make it to that Sweet 16.
Well, look, I mean, Pitino's, you can make a case as the greatest college basketball coach of all time with what he's done at so many different spots. I'm someone who picked St. John's to go to the Final Four last year. And the way they went out with the offensive struggles, the inability to hit an outside shot, I do wonder if that is kind of in the back of minds of some people, a bit of a scar of They got upset by the 10 seed Arkansas in the second round last year as a 2 seed. And can you trust the team that has that question mark to make it far in March? I do have them beating Kansas to get to the Sweet 16 as well, but there's a part of me that needs to see it because the way they finished last year is still fresh for a lot of people.
Couple more teams I want to hit on with you with Chris Vannini here from The Athletic here on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, for all of your March Madness coverage, make sure you are subscribed to The Athletic, like I am, to get all the latest updates. One of those updates is about Alabama. Alabama, before they lost their best player to this legal situation and has kicked off the team, a lot of people were probably picking them as maybe a Sweet 16, maybe even Elite 8 team. Now, Chris, I think you might even ask the question, how close is this Hofstra game going to be?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's second leading scorer is likely out for the weekend for a lot of drug possession. He was arrested this week. And Hofstra's a pretty veteran team. Speedy Claxton's the coach there.
Yep.
And they have been a sneaky team, mid-major-wise, that could make a run. They are going to be potentially a popular pick. How focused is that Alabama team? I mean, they've gone through some of this before. They've had controversies on the team and still been able to go on runs. And Nate Oates is a very, very good coach. But this is about the worst possible timing you could have for something like this. They play Friday, Alabama Hofstra, but 13 over a 4, it's a stretch. I think Alabama's still a very, very big favorite. If you're looking for a team and a reason that something could happen, it could be that Hofstra team there.
Is Illinois a team that we're not talking about enough? This is one of the highest scoring teams in college basketball this year. Is that a team that could maybe put a scare into people's brackets?
So I have struggled to trust Illinois over the years because they have always been falling short. There was a year they lost to Loyola Chicago. They rarely in March go farther than they're supposed to. They did go to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago and got absolutely destroyed by UConn in that Elite Eight game. So can you trust Illinois and Brad Underwood in this team? I don't know. I have trouble trusting Illinois to go that far. This is a team, by the way, that is full of European players. Like Brad Underwood has really gone out to the Balkans and found a bunch of European players to come play for them. Is that mindset any different in this tournament? I don't know. We've never really quite seen that before at the college basketball level. They will be a very interesting story. They played Penn in the first weekend. Penn is coached by Fran McCaffrey, the longtime Iowa coach. So he's very familiar with Illinois and Brad Underwood and what they like to do. Penn has TJ Power, who scored 44 points to beat Yale in the Ivy League championship, former 5-star Duke player. He's down at 10. That's another 14-3 to maybe keep an eye on if Illinois falls short the way it often has. I have Illinois moving on, but I don't feel all that great about it right now.
This area down here in South Jersey, there's a lot of Villanova fans, Chris. A lot of Nova Wildcat people in and around the signal for 97.3 ESPN. They got a very interesting matchup versus Utah State. Can the Nova Wildcats survive to face the Arizona Wildcats in the next round?
I do have Villanova winning. Utah State has been a very good program the last several years. They've lost their coaches to other jobs. They keep winning. It's a team that usually plays very well. But the Mountain West as a whole struggles in the NCAA tournament. The last several years, that league has got 3-4 teams in, and barely anybody goes anywhere. Other than that year, San Diego State went to the championship game. To the Final Four, I think, played FAU. And there's only one Mountain West team in this year's tournament. The committee did not respect that conference the way it used to in the past. I'm going Villanova just on the fact that the Mountain West teams usually do not fare very well in this tournament.
Chris, before I let you go, I got to admit there's one matchup in this tournament that I'm hoping for more than any other. I hope and pray we see UConn and UCLA in the second round so I can just watch two of the most animated coaches in college basketball lose their daggone minds for 40-plus minutes.
I mean that region has maybe the most stacked coaching lineup we've ever seen. You've got Danny Hurley with 2 national titles. You got John Shire. You got Tom Izzo. You got Rick Pitino. Bill Self has a couple of titles. And Mick Cronin's a pretty good coach in his own right. So this is a loaded coaching bracket there in the East Division. Duke, St. John's, Kansas, UConn, Michigan State, UCLA, UConn. There's going to be a lot of yelling. And if the winner of that team goes on to play Michigan State potentially in the Sweet 16, even more of that. So some coaching royalty and a lot of lost voices in that region.
A lot of yelling. That's a nice way of putting it. I was saying earlier, Chris, one of my favorite stories of the year was when Dan Hurley got thrown out for the one game, and he said in the post-game press conference, he said that he doesn't know why they kicked him out because he was yelling at himself. Like, it's just stuff like that. It's like, how can you not be entertained by these people?
He's very much like that, and I'm sure we'll see something.
Chris Vannini from The Athletic, all your college basketball March Madness coverage at The Athletic, and he joined us right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. First Four coverage begins tonight at 6:30 on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, great stuff. Appreciate you jumping on today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Of course, First Four Game 2 is tonight. Tomorrow, we have all-day coverage of the NCAA tournament, noon to midnight. So we got you covered all weekend long, actually, on 97.3 ESPN. So here's the lineup. For those who don't know, Thursday and Friday, no Sports Bash. We will have NCAA tournament coverage from noon to midnight, Thursday and Friday. I will be back on the air Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. I will be at Hangtime Bar and Grill, hanging with Hennig, broadcasting live for the NCAA tournament is what we will be doing on Saturday. So come on out, hang out with us. We'll have some prize giveaways, and you can hang out, watch all the games with us, 12 to 3 p.m., and then we'll go right into the tournament coverage on Saturday at 3 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. And then Sunday, we have tournament coverage again from noon to midnight on Sunday following Billy Schwein in the locker room. So Billy will be on from 10 to noon on Sunday, and then the tournament coverage begins at 12 o'clock right here on your home for all the madness. 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, you listen to all the games as well on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'll check back on the Whitehorse RV text board one more time on the other side. 609-403-0973.
Lanier in transition, hits the three, and a sign of life from Knoxville. Jumper up and it rattles in at the buzzer.
Don't miss any of this year's action on the road to the Final Four with Westwood One's exclusive coverage of the men's NCAA tournament.
Listen to the NCAA tournament, the First Four, on 97.3 ESPN. Tonight, coverage begins at 6:30.
Catch all the college basketball tournament coverage on 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by the New Jersey Lottery's Millionaire for Life.
Get ready for the madness.
He wins it at the buzzer!
March Madness on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, coming up is your final opportunity today to qualify for the Phillies trip giveaway here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. So I want to say roughly in about, 3-4 minutes from now, sounder will go off. You call in, you qualify, and you'll be required to be at the Anchorage at Summers Point next Thursday for Phillies Opening Day. Want to squeeze in a couple of texts that have come in before we get out of here. Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Stephen EHT says, the Flyers are kind of an unlucky team in a very good Eastern Conference. Flyers are 8 games above 500. Sixers are 5 games above 500. Yet, some people look at the Flyers as a horrible team, and some people look at the Sixers as a pretty good team. Well, Stephen EHC, it's, perception becomes reality. If someone says something enough times, people think it's true. It's not that the Flyers are irrelevant or they're a horrible team. It's that when you don't make the postseason for about a 5-year period, you kind of get the side-eye look. It's like, can we trust this team? Are they really who we thought they could be or should be? And I think that's where the differentiation is. The differentiation is that people at least know the Sixers are a playoff team, or at least they should be. Excuse me. So I think the perception is the Sixers are a better team because they at least make the playoffs, and the Flyers haven't made the playoffs. The reality is that in the next few years, the Flyers are going to be the much better team long term because the Flyers are not handcuffed with abomination contracts like the Sixers are. The contracts to Paul George and Joel Embiid have really put them in a bad situation. They went all in like a poker player at a table on 2 players who have checkered histories when it comes to health, and it hasn't paid off. So I think that's why people, and I think the indifference about the 76ers has created an environment where people, people might people might look at these teams differently. And again, it's an if. It's a big if. If those Flyers could ever make the playoffs. I'm laughing because I see the text that just came in from Geoff from Summers Point. Says, hey, Josh, I might pop in and to Hang Time Bar with you for hanging with Hennig this Saturday. Why don't you bring my hat that I won months ago? It's not my fault, Geoff, that you never came to the station and picked up the hat. But sure, I'll bring your hat that I've been hanging on to for about, 5 months now? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'll be at Hang Time Bar and Grill on Saturday for all the NCAA tournament games. Hanging with Hennig, broadcasting live 12 to 3. We'll be talking with Fran Dunphy, actually. Fran Dunphy, the legendary coach from Penn, LaSalle, Temple, Hall of Fame coach Fran Dunphy will join us on Saturday on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. So you'll get to, if you're listening on the radio or on the stream, you'll get to hear from him. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more text in. Okay. I gotcha. All right. Somebody said this is for me to read off the air. So, all right, really quick before we get out of here, I do have some picks for the next few days. I always say either my bracket does well or my picks do well. So, judge as you will. So, here are my main picks that I like coming up in the next couple of days of the tournament when we won't be on the radio. So, I like South Florida to beat Louisville. That is, they are a 4.5-point dog right now in that matchup. So I like them to cover that. I like High Point to cover the 10.5 versus Wisconsin. I have High Point going to beat Wisconsin. But if you're someone who's not willing to take the dog, right? If you're not willing to take the underdog, maybe you're a little too chalky, you could take the spread. So High Point, 10.5-point underdog in that matchup. I like Siena, who just won the MAC tournament in Atlantic City, to cover the 27.5 points against Duke in their matchup. I also like VCU to beat North Carolina outright in their matchup. And I also like Penn versus Illinois over 151 points scored. So those are my games I like on Thursday. On Friday, I like Hofstra to cover the 11.5 against Alabama. I like the Northern Iowa versus St. John's game to go under the 131.5. I think that'll be a low-scoring game. I also like, and I know some people are going to look at me side eyes when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that Arizona is going to take their foot off the gas pedal in their game. And I think Long Island is going to cover the 30.5 points. So, again, those are my picks for the next couple of days. We'll see how well I do. And again, it's every year for me. It's I'm either good at the bracket or I'm going to pick in the games. So we're going to find out which is which. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. Yes, you listening on 97.3 ESPN. You call in right now at 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Your final opportunity to qualify for the Phillies trip to Baltimore contest is right now. 609-573-3776. You want to win the trip, you got to qualify. Step 1, 609-573-3776. Step 2, when you qualify, you must be present next Thursday at the Anchorage in Summers Point for Phillies Opening Day with Mike Gill and the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. But first, you got to qualify. 609-573-3776. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Sports Bash. I will be back on Saturday for Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN.